Don't you dare touch my son again. Victoria Harrington's fingers dug into Grace's wrist, her nails breaking skin. You're nothing. You clean toilets. You don't get to have opinions about my child. Grace didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. She looked straight into the eyes of the most powerful woman in New York fashion and said words that would change everything. I found the marks on his leg. I know what you've been doing. Victoria's face went white. 2-year-old Mason watched from his crib, his small spine curved like a question mark, his eyes holding pain no child should know. This was the moment everything shattered. Before we continue, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? What city? What time? Drop a comment below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you believe in stories that touch the heart, subscribe and stay with me until the very end. This one will stay with you forever. Grace Thompson pushed through the service entrance with her cleaning supplies clutched against her chest. Her hands trembled. 3rd day on this job. She couldn't afford to mess it up. You're 4 minutes late. Megan Porter stood blocking the hallway, arms crossed, phone in hand. The nanny looked at Grace the way someone looks at dirt on expensive shoes. The subway broke down between stations. I ran 6 blocks to save it. Megan cut her off. Mrs. Harrington doesn't pay for excuses. She pays for results. Guest bathroom needs to be perfect by noon. Magazine people coming. She looked Grace up and down with obvious disgust. Try not to embarrass the household. Grace bit her tongue so hard she tasted copper. Yes, ma'am. Megan walked away. Her heels clicked against marble like a metronome, counting down to disaster. Grace exhaled slowly. She thought about Destiny, her 8-year-old daughter probably sitting in class right now wondering if Mama would make enough money this month to keep the lights on. She thought about Grandma Rosalie at home alone, her diabetes medication running low, her faith running high. This job paid 3 times what Grace made cleaning offices downtown. She needed it. Her family needed it. She started working. The penthouse sprawled across the entire top floor of Manhattan's most exclusive building. Everything gleamed white and cold. Crystal, marble, furniture that cost more than Grace's yearly salary. Beautiful in a way that made her skin crawl. Something felt wrong here. She couldn't name it yet, but she felt it in her bones. Then she heard the crying. Grace froze mid-motion, her cloth hovering over a surface that was already spotless. That sound. She knew that sound. Not a tantrum. Not a child wanting attention. This was pain. Raw, desperate, endless pain from someone too young to have words for it. The crying came from upstairs, muffled but relentless. Each sob pulled at something deep in Grace's chest. Something she couldn't ignore no matter how hard she tried. She moved toward the staircase, just to clean the railing. Just doing her job. Stop crying, Mason. Megan's voice drifted down some sharp with irritation. There's nothing wrong with you. Stop it. The crying continued, louder. I said stop. You're giving me a migraine. Grace gripped the railing until her knuckles ached. Fine. Cry all you want. See if I care. A door slammed upstairs. The crying dissolved into exhausted whimpers. Grace stood frozen on the stairs. Every instinct screamed at her to go up there, to help, to do something. But she was invisible here, powerless. Just the cleaning woman who couldn't afford to lose this job. She forced herself to turn around, to go back to work, to remember her place. But that sound followed her. It buried itself in her heart and wouldn't let go. 2 hours later, voices erupted in the foyer. The investors want answers, Victoria. Real answers, not your usual deflection. My deflection built this empire, Harrison. What did yours build? A string of failed ventures and bad press. Grace pressed herself into a corner, invisible as the Harringtons swept past. Victoria moved like a weapon. Tall, blonde, perfect in ways that seemed almost inhuman. Her dress probably cost more than Grace's rent for a year. Her face belonged on magazine covers, and it appeared there often. Harrison followed handsome and hollow, his eyes never leaving his phone. The kind of man who'd stopped seeing the world around him years ago. I don't have time for this, Victoria snapped. Milan is in 3 weeks, the collection isn't ready, and you want to talk about investors? Someone has to keep this family solvent while you play dress-up. Play dress-up! Victoria spun around. Fury radiating from every pore. I am Victoria Harrington. I don't play at anything. That's when the crying started again, louder than before, more desperate. Victoria's expression shifted from anger to annoyance. Oh, for God's sake, what now? She marched toward the stairs. Harrison followed, still typing. Grace shouldn't have moved, shouldn't have listened. But her feet carried her closer anyway. What's wrong with him? Victoria's voice echoed from above. I don't know, Mrs. Harrington. Megan defensive. He's been like this since morning. Nothing helps. Then make something help. I have calls with 3 different magazine editors today. Maybe we should get the doctor again. Harrison's voice distant, distracted. We've done that 3 times. They all say the same thing. Growing pains, developmental fundamental phase, he'll grow out of it. More crying, broken, hopeless sobbing that made Grace's eyes burn. Just put him in his crib and close the door. Victoria's heels clicked toward the hallway. He needs to learn that crying doesn't get him what he wants. Grace's nails dug into her palms. She thought about Destiny at 2 years old crying with an ear infection and how Grace had stayed awake for 3 days straight until she figured out what was wrong. What kind of mother heard her child in pain and walked away? The afternoon crawled past in agony. Grace cleaned every surface twice. She polished things that didn't need polishing. She invented work to keep herself busy, to keep herself from running upstairs and doing something that would get her fired. The crying had stopped. That was almost worse. Silence from a child in pain meant they'd given up. They'd learned that no one was coming. Around 4 o'clock, Grace's phone buzzed, a text from Destiny. Mama, when are you coming home? Grandma says her feet hurt bad today. Grace typed back quickly. Soon, baby. Help Grandma with dinner. Love you. She stared at the message for a long moment. Her daughter, her grandmother, everyone depending on her, everyone counting on her to keep this job, keep the money coming, keep their fragile life from collapsing. But upstairs, another child was suffering. Another child had no one fighting for them. Grace looked toward the staircase. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. Words spoken 1,000 times throughout Grace's childhood burned into her soul like scripture. The measure of a person isn't in their job title, baby girl. It's in their character. God puts us where we're needed, not where we're comfortable. Grace took a breath. Then she started climbing. The nursery door stood open. Grace stepped inside on silent feet, her heart hammering against her ribs. The room looked like a photograph from a luxury magazine. Designer furniture. Expensive toys still wrapped in plastic. Walls painted in colors that some decorator had charged thousands to choose. Cold. Perfect. Empty. And there, in a white crib that cost more than Grace's car, lay Mason Harrington. Grace's breath caught. The child was curled on his side, his small body twisted into an unnatural shape. His face was swollen from crying. His eyes, when they found Grace, held nothing but defeat. He didn't reach for her, didn't make a sound, just watched her with the resignation of someone who'd learned that hope was pointless. Hey there, sweetheart. Grace approached slowly, keeping her voice soft. It's okay, I'm here. Mason stared at her, waiting for her to leave like everyone else did. Grace reached into the crib. Can I pick you up, baby? The moment her hands touched him, Mason's whole body went rigid. Not with fear, with pain. She felt it in the sharp breath he sucked in the way his face crumpled in the small whimper that escaped his lips. Oh, honey, Grace's voice cracked. Something's really hurting you, isn't it? She lifted him as gently as she could, cradling his small body against her chest. His spine felt wrong under her hands, curved in a way that made her nursing training scream warnings. Mason stayed stiff for a moment, then slowly, hesitantly, he relaxed just a fraction. His tiny hand gripped her shirt like a lifeline. I've got you. Grace carried him to the rocking chair by the window. I've got you, baby. She began to rock, humming an old spiritual her grandmother used to sing. Her hand moved gently over Mason's back, and that's when she felt it clearly. The unnatural curve of his spine beneath expensive fabric. Something was very, very wrong. Grace looked down at his outfit. A tailored suit that belonged on a runway, not a toddler. Fitted jacket, structured vest, pants so tight they looked painted on. Let's get you comfortable, okay? She started unbuttoning the jacket. Mason didn't fight her, but she felt tension rippling through his small body with each movement, like he expected it to hurt. The jacket came off, then the vest, then the stiff dress shirt underneath. Grace's hands began to shake. Red marks crisscrossed Mason's torso. Lines pressed into his soft skin by seams and buttons that had been digging in for God knows how long. She moved to his pants. Designer denim so rigid she had to peel it away carefully, and then she saw his leg. A deep groove ran above his left knee where the tight inseam had been pressing day after day after day. The mark was angry red, almost purple in places, and his leg, even freed from the pants, couldn't straighten properly. The muscles had adapted to being trapped. Oh my God, the words came out as a whisper. Oh my God, baby, what have they done to you? She photographed everything. Her hands shook so badly she had to take each picture twice. The marks on his legs, the indentations on his torso, the curve of his spine that was clearly visible now that he wasn't trapped in restrictive clothing. Mason watched her with those sad, knowing eyes. Then something shifted in his expression. His bottom lip trembled, and suddenly he pressed his face into her shoulder and began to sob. Not the resigned crying she'd heard before. This was different. Deeper. The cry of someone who'd been holding their pain alone for so long and finally found someone who saw them. Grace held him tight, her own tears falling freely. "I see you, sweetheart. I see you, and I'm going to help you, I promise." She let him cry until he had nothing left. She didn't shush him, didn't tell him to stop, just held him and rocked him and let him feel what it was like to be safe. Eventually, Mason's sobs quieted, his breathing slowed. His small body, free from those terrible clothes, began to relax in ways Grace suspected he hadn't relaxed in months. She looked around the nursery with new eyes. The dresser drawers she knew would be full of more designer torture devices. The schedule on the wall mapped out photo shoots and social media appearances and brand partnerships. Every single day, this child was dressed up like a doll and made to pose while his spine slowly twisted and his legs slowly locked and his spirit slowly broke. The pictures on the shelf showed Victoria holding Mason at glamorous events. Mother and son in matching outfits, perfect smiles for the cameras. Grace's stomach turned. He wasn't their child. He was their prop. She needed more evidence. Something that would make people listen. Something undeniable. Holding Mason against her hip, Grace moved to the dresser. She opened drawers full of expensive, restrictive clothing. She checked the closet, finding more of the same. Then, in the bottom drawer, hidden beneath a pile of cashmere sweaters, she found a folder. Medical records. Grace's heart stopped. She balanced Mason on her hip and flipped through the pages with trembling hands. The first report dated 6 months ago. Patient shows signs of developing postural abnormalities. Recommend physical therapy in loose, comfortable clothing. Someone had written in the margin, "Not possible, conflicts with brand image." The second report 4 months ago, spinal curvature progressing. Strongly recommend immediate intervention. Continue restrictive clothing will cause permanent damage. The note beneath, "Get second opinion from Dr. Markham. He's more understanding." The third report 2 months ago. Grace's blood ran cold as she read. Progressive scoliosis caused by external mechanical factors. Without immediate intervention, patient will require surgical correction within 12 to 18 months. This is preventable. Please remove restrictive clothing immediately. At the bottom, in Victoria's elegant handwriting discussed with Harrison, Milan show takes priority. Will address after Fashion Week. After Fashion Week, they'd known. For 6 months, they'd known their son was being damaged. They'd known and they'd done nothing because it didn't fit their schedule. Grace photographed every page. Her hands shook with rage so intense she could barely hold the phone steady. Mason patted her face with his small hand. His eyes asked a question he was too young to voice. "I'm okay, baby." Grace kissed his forehead. "I'm going to get you help. Real help, I promise." She tucked the folder back where she'd found it. She'd just finished when she heard a sound that made her blood freeze. The elevator, opening downstairs, heels on marble, coming fast. Grace looked at Mason, still in his soft undershirt, finally comfortable, finally at peace. She looked at her phone full of evidence. She looked at the door. No time to redress him, no time to hide what she'd found, no time for anything but a prayer and the truth. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Victoria Harrington appeared in the doorway. For a moment, she just stood there. Her eyes moved from Grace to Mason to the pile of designer clothes on the floor. Understanding dawned slowly. Then came the rage. "What have you done?" Grace held Mason tighter. The child buried his face in her shoulder, trembling. "Mrs. Harrington, I can explain." "Explain." Victoria stepped into the room, her voice rising. "Explain why you're in my son's nursery, why you've undressed him, why you're holding him like you have any right. He was in pain. I was trying to help him." "Help?" Victoria laughed, sharp and brittle. "You're the cleaning woman. You scrub floors. You don't touch my child. You don't make decisions about his care." She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police. This is kidnapping. Assault. I'll have you arrested so fast." "I found the medical records." Victoria's finger froze over her phone. "I found the reports from 3 different doctors." Grace's voice came out steady, stronger than she felt. "They all told you the same thing. Your son's spine is curving because you keep trapping him in clothes that won't let him move. They told you to stop. They told you he'd need surgery if you didn't." She took a step toward Victoria. "And you wrote notes in the margins about how it conflicted with your brand image, how you'd deal with it after Fashion Week." Victoria's face had gone gray. You went through my things. I documented what you've been doing to your own child. Give me that phone. Victoria moved forward, her hand outstretched. Give it to me right now. Grace stepped back, shielding Mason with her body. No. Do you have any idea who I am? Victoria's voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. I am Victoria Harrington. I can destroy you with a single phone call. Your job, your reputation, your family, everything you have, I can take it away like that. She snapped her fingers. Your grandmother's medical bills, I know about those. Your daughter's school, I know which one. One word from me and doors start closing. One word and you become unemployable. One word and... Stop. Both women turned. Megan stood in the doorway, her face pale, her phone in her hand. What are you doing here? Victoria snapped. I sent you to get my dress. I came back early. The shop was closed. Megan's eyes moved to Mason, to the clothes on the floor, to the tension crackling between the two women. What's going on? Nothing that concerns you. Go downstairs. I heard what she said. Megan didn't move. About the medical records, about Mason's spine. She's lying. She's a thief and a liar trying to extort money from us. I've seen the marks too. The words dropped into the room like stones into still water. Victoria turned slowly to face her nanny. What did you say? Megan's hands trembled, but she kept talking. When I change him, the marks on his legs, the way he can't straighten up properly, I've seen it for months. Her voice cracked. I told myself it wasn't my business. I told myself you knew what you were doing. But I knew. Deep down, I knew something was wrong. You're fired. Victoria's voice was ice. Get out of my house. Mrs. Harrington. Get out, Victoria screamed. Both of you, get out of my house right now. Mason began to cry. Not the quiet, defeated crying Grace had heard before. This was terror. Pure primal terror at the sound of his mother's rage. Grace held him close, trying to shield him from the noise, from the fury, from everything. I'm not leaving without making sure he gets help. Grace's voice cut through Victoria's screaming. I'm taking him to a hospital. They're going to document everything, and then we'll see what the police have to say about those medical records. You can't take my son anywhere. That's kidnapping. It's not kidnapping if I'm saving his life. Victoria moved faster than Grace expected. She grabbed for Mason, her perfectly manicured nails scratching Grace's arm as she tried to wrench the child away. Mason screamed, not a cry, a scream, the sound of pure agony as his twisted spine was jolted by his mother's rough handling. Grace pulled back, putting herself between Victoria and the child. Don't touch him. You're hurting him. He's my son, mine. You don't get to tell me. What in God's name is happening here? Everyone froze. Harrison Harrington stood in the doorway. His phone finally lowered his face, showing emotion for the first time since Grace had seen him. Victoria, what's going on? I could hear screaming from the elevator. This woman. Victoria pointed at Grace, her hand shaking. This cleaning woman has been in Mason's room. She undressed him. She's trying to take him. She's claiming she's making accusations about the medical records you've been hiding. Grace stepped forward, still holding Mason protectively. The ones that say your son's spine is curving because of the clothes you force him to wear. The ones where you wrote notes about how it conflicted with your brand. Harrison's face went very still. What medical records? There are no, she's lying, she's trying to... In the bottom drawer of the dresser, Grace pointed. Under the cashmere sweaters. 3 different doctors. 6 months of warnings you both ignored. Harrison walked to the dresser. He opened the bottom drawer. He pushed aside the sweaters. Victoria lunged toward him. Harrison, don't... It's not what it looks like I was going to tell you. He pulled out the folder. The room fell silent except for Mason's quiet whimpering against Grace's shoulder. Harrison read. His face changed as his eyes moved down each page. The color drained away. His hands began to shake. 6 months. His voice was barely audible. You've known for 6 months. Harrison, let me explain. Surgery. He looked up at his wife with an expression Grace had never seen before. Horror, betrayal, the death of something that had once been love. Our son might need surgery, and you wrote notes about Fashion Week. The show is important. The brand? He's our child. Harrison's voice exploded through the room. He's our son, Victoria, not a prop, not a product, our child. Don't you dare lecture me. Victoria's composure cracked completely. I've built everything we have. Everything. While you played golf and made bad investments, I built an empire And yes, Mason is part of that. He has to be part of that. It's how this world works. He's 2 years old. He's a Harrington. He has responsibilities. Harrison stared at his wife like he was seeing her for the first time, like he was seeing a monster wearing her face. I watched him cry. His voice dropped to a whisper. Every day I watched him cry, and I told myself it was nothing. I told myself you had it handled. I told myself... He couldn't finish. You told yourself it wasn't your problem. Victoria's lip curled. You were happy to ignore him as long as the money kept coming. Don't pretend to be the victim here. I'm not the victim. Harrison looked at Mason at the child curled against Grace's shoulder, seeking comfort from a stranger because his own parents had none to give. He is. Grace watched the marriage crumble in real time, watched two people who had built their lives on image and success realize they had nothing underneath, nothing real, nothing that mattered. Mason lifted his head from Grace's shoulder. His small hand reached toward his father. Dada. The word hung in the air like a prayer. Harrison's face crumpled. He moved toward Grace, toward his son, his hands reaching out. May I hold him? Grace hesitated. She looked at Mason at the hope flickering in his sad eyes. Gently, she said. His spine, be careful with his spine. She transferred Mason into Harrison's arms, showing him how to support the child's curved back, how to hold him without causing pain. Harrison held his son like something precious and broken. Tears streamed out in his face. I'm sorry. His voice shattered on the words. I'm so sorry, Mason. Daddy's sorry. Mason patted his father's wet cheek with a small hand, confused, hopeful, afraid to believe. Victoria watched the scene with an expression Grace couldn't read. Fury, fear, maybe buried deep beneath the surface something like shame. This changes nothing. Victoria's voice had gone cold again, controlled. She still broke into our private things. She still has no right. She saved our son. Harrison looked up at his wife with eyes that had lost all warmth. She saw what we refused to see. She did what we should have done months ago. He kissed Mason's forehead gently. We're taking him to a hospital. Tonight, right now. Harrison, think about what you're saying. The press will want the... I don't care about the press. The brand. I don't care about the brand. Everything we've built. What have we built, Victoria? Harrison's voice broke. Really? What do we have? A penthouse full of expensive things? A closet full of awards? A marriage based on appearances? A son whose spine is curved because we were too busy protecting our image to protect him? Victoria opened her mouth, closed it. For the first time since Grace had met her, the most powerful woman in New York, fashion had nothing to say. I'm calling our driver. Harrison pulled out his phone with one hand still cradling Mason with the other. We're going to Mount Sinai. They have the best pediatric specialists in the city. He looked at Grace. Will you come with us? Mason seems to trust you, and I... His voice faltered. I don't know how to hold him without hurting him. You seem to know. Grace thought about everything she stood to lose. Her job, which was certainly gone now. Her reference, which Victoria would destroy. Her reputation in the world of wealthy clients who talked to each other. She thought about Destiny waiting at home, about Grandma Rosalie praying by her bedside, about the bills piling up on her kitchen table. Then she looked at Mason, at his small hand still reaching for her, at the trust in his eyes. Of course I'll come. Victoria stepped forward. If you think you can just walk out of here with my son and some cleaning woman, and you can come too. Harrison's voice was tired, empty. Or you can stay here with your brand. Your choice. He walked toward the door, Mason in his arms. Grace followed. Behind them, Victoria stood alone in the perfect nursery, with its expensive toys and designer clothes and schedule of photo shoots. She had everything. Money, power, success. A name that opened doors across the world, and she had nothing at all. Grace reached the elevator just as the doors opened. Harrison stepped inside, murmuring softly to Mason. At the last moment, Grace turned back. Victoria stood at the end of the hallway. Her perfect posture had crumbled. Her designer dress suddenly looked like a costume. Her face, without its mask of control, showed something Grace hadn't expected. Not anger. Not defiance. Devastation. Mrs. Harrington. Grace held the elevator door. Are you coming? Victoria looked at her son, at the small boy who had finally stopped crying because someone was finally holding him right. Her lip trembled. Then she straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and walked toward the elevator with the careful steps of someone walking toward her own execution. The doors closed on all of them together, and somewhere in the depths of the city, the wheels of justice began to turn. The elevator descended in suffocating silence. Grace stood in the corner watching Victoria's reflection in the polished doors. The woman hadn't spoken since stepping inside. Her hands trembled at her sides. Mason whimpered softly against Harrison's chest. The child kept turning his head, searching for Grace, reaching toward her with one small hand. "He wants you." Harrison's voice came out rough, broken. "Would you mind?" Grace took Mason, carefully supporting his curved spine the way she'd learned. The child immediately relaxed, pressing his face into her shoulder with a shuddering breath. Victoria made a sound, something between a sob and a laugh. "My own son," her voice cracked. "My own son wants a stranger more than me." No one answered. There was nothing to say. The elevator opened to the parking garage. A black car waited driver, already holding the door. "Mount Sinai," Harrison told him. "Pediatric emergency, fast." They piled into the back seat. Grace held Mason. Harrison sat beside her. Victoria pressed herself against the opposite door like she was trying to disappear. The car pulled out into Manhattan traffic. Evening had fallen. Lights blurred past the windows. "How long?" Harrison's voice cut through the silence. He wasn't looking at his wife. "How long have you known Victoria, really known?" "I told you. The doctor said..." "Don't." Harrison turned to face her. "Don't lie to me. Not anymore. Not about this." Victoria's perfect composure cracked further. "The first report came 6 months ago, but they said it was minor, correctable. They said to stop putting him in restrictive clothing. I read the notes. Your notes. Conflicts with brand image. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, the expectations. If Mason doesn't appear in the campaigns, people will talk. They'll say I'm not committed. They'll say, what, Victoria, that you chose your child's health over photo shoots, that you acted like a mother instead of a CEO." Victoria's face twisted. "Easy for you to say. You've never built anything. You've never had to fight for every inch of respect in an industry that wants to tear you down." "I built a family." Harrison's voice dropped to something deadly quiet. "Or I thought I did. I thought we were building something together, a home, a life, a child we would love and protect. I do love him." "Do you?" "Because I've watched you, Victoria. I've watched you hand him off to nannies the moment he becomes inconvenient. I've watched you dress him up for photos and then forget he exists. I've watched you ignore his crying because it interfered with your calls." "That's not fair. His spine is curved because of you." Harrison's composure finally shattered. "Our son might need surgery because you couldn't let him wear normal clothes. You knew. You had 3 different doctors telling you, and you chose Fashion Week." Victoria opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I thought I had more time." Her voice came out small, broken. "I thought after Milan I could focus on him. I thought..." "You thought wrong." Mason stirred against Grace's shoulder. She hummed softly, rocking him, trying to shield him from the poison filling the car. The child lifted his head. He looked at his mother, then at his father, then back at Grace. "Hurt," he whispered. The first real word Grace had heard him speak clearly. "Hurt, Mama." Victoria's face crumpled. Tears streamed down her cheeks, ruining makeup that probably cost hundreds of dollars. "I know, baby." Her voice shook. "I know it hurts. Mama's going to fix it. I promise." She reached toward him. Mason flinched back, pressing closer to Grace. Victoria's hand fell. She turned toward the window, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Grace watched her cry. She should have felt satisfaction, justice, something. Instead, she felt only sadness. For Mason. For the shattered family. For all the ways people destroyed the things they claimed to love. The car pulled up to Mount Sinai 20 minutes later. Harrison was out before it fully stopped reaching for Mason. "I'll carry him. You both come." They rushed through the emergency entrance. Harrison's voice carried across the waiting room. "My son needs help. His spine, there's something wrong with his spine. We have medical records. Please, someone needs to look at him now." A nurse appeared within seconds. She took one look at Harrison's desperate face, at Mason's twisted posture, at the tension radiating from the group. "This way. Pediatric specialist on call. Come with me." They moved through corridors that smelled of antiseptic and fear. Grace kept pace, her hand never leaving Mason's back. "Are you family?" The nurse looked at Grace with sharp, assessing eyes. Harrison started. "She's with us." Victoria's voice cut in, hoarse but firm. She noticed what was wrong. She's the one who found the records. The nurse's expression shifted. Something knowing. Something that made Grace's stomach tighten. They reached an examination room. A woman in a white coat was already waiting. Dr. Eleanor Chen, according to her badge. Her face was kind, but serious. "I'm Dr. Chen. I handle pediatric orthopedics." She approached Mason, still in Harrison's arms. "May I take a look at him?" Harrison nodded. He tried to lay Mason on the examination table, but the child clung to him, whimpering. "It's okay, buddy. The doctor's going to help you." "No, Hassan." Mason's voice rose. "No, Daddy, hurt." "I know it hurts, but she's going to make it better." Grace stepped forward. She touched Mason's cheek gently. "Hey, sweetheart. Remember what I promised? I said I would help you. This doctor is going to help too. Can you be brave for me?" Mason looked at her with those sad, trusting eyes. Then slowly he nodded. He let Harrison lay him on the table. Dr. Chen moved in her hands gentle as she began examining him. "When did you first notice postural abnormalities?" Harrison glanced at Victoria. "There were some reports from other doctors 6 months ago." Dr. Chen's hands paused. 6 months and no intervention. "We were told it might resolve on its own." "By whom?" Victoria stepped forward, her voice steadier now. "Dr. Marcus Whitfield. He's treated several children in our social circle." He said, "I know Dr. Whitfield." Dr. Chen's tone cooled several degrees. "He's known for telling wealthy parents what they want to hear." She turned back to Mason, continuing her examination with renewed intensity. "Mrs. Harrington, I need you to tell me exactly what your son has been wearing on a daily basis. Be specific." Victoria's face flushed. "Designer pieces, custom made, tailored to fit him perfectly for photographs and public appearances." "Tailored how fitted structured?" "Yes, very fitted, very structured. The brand requires a certain aesthetic." Dr. Chen looked up. Her expression had gone hard. "How many hours a day? I don't know exactly. Most of the day, I suppose, for shoots and events and... most of the day." Dr. Chen straightened. "Mrs. Harrington, your son has developed postural scoliosis. His spine is curving because his body has been forced to adapt to chronic restriction of movement." She pulled up Mason's shirt, gently revealing the marks Grace had photographed earlier. "These pressure injuries are consistent with tight clothing worn for extended periods. His musculature has developed abnormally because he couldn't move freely during critical developmental stages." "Can you fix it?" Harrison's voice cracked. "Can you help him?" "At this stage, yes. With intensive physical therapy, proper support, and complete elimination of restrictive clothing, we can likely correct the curvature without surgery." Relief flooded Harrison's face. "Thank God." "However," Dr. Chen's voice sharpened, "and it's finished." If this had continued another 6 to 12 months, we'd be looking at surgical intervention, possibly multiple surgeries. Your son would have faced a lifetime of chronic pain and mobility issues. The room fell silent. Dr. Chen turned to Grace. "You're the one who discovered this, too." "Yes, ma'am. I worked for the family as a cleaner." "You noticed what 3 doctors and 2 parents missed." Grace didn't know what to say. She looked at Mason, now lying quietly on the table, his small hand reaching toward her. "I heard him crying. I couldn't ignore it." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "I need to make some calls. There are protocols for situations like this." She looked at Victoria and Harrison. "I'm required to contact Child Protective Services." Victoria's face went white. "No, please. We'll do whatever you say. Physical therapy, different clothes, whatever it takes. You don't need to..." "This isn't optional, Mrs. Harrington. A child has been harmed through neglect. The law is clear." "We didn't know." Victoria's voice rose. "We thought the doctors had it handled. We trusted. You knew." Dr. Chen's voice cut like a scalpel. "Your cleaning woman showed me the medical records before you arrived. I've seen your handwritten notes about brand requirements and scheduling conflicts. You knew exactly what was happening to your son." Grace's breath caught. She'd sent the photos to the hospital from the car. She'd wanted to make sure someone official saw the evidence before it could disappear. Victoria turned to Grace with an expression of pure betrayal. "You sent them before we even got here." "I needed to make sure someone believed me." Grace's voice held steady. "I needed to make sure the evidence couldn't be hidden. I trusted you. In the car, I thought we were going to handle this together." "Your son's spine is curved, Mrs. Harrington. That's not something you handle. That's something you fix." Dr. Chen moved toward the door. "I'm calling CPS now. A social worker will be here within the hour. I suggest you both cooperate fully." She left. The door clicked shut behind her. Harrison sank into a chair, his head in his hands. Oh God, Victoria, what have we done?" Victoria didn't answer. She stood frozen in the middle of the room, her designer armor finally shattered beyond repair. Mason began to whimper on the examination table. Grace moved to him immediately, picking him up, cradling him against her chest. "It's okay, sweetheart. Everything's going to be okay." "I want that woman out." Victoria's voice had gone cold again, hard. The mask was trying to rebuild itself. "She's done enough damage. She doesn't belong here." "Victoria," Harrison started. "She went through our things. She stole medical records. She reported us to child services before we even had a chance to explain. She's destroyed everything. She saved our son." Harrison stood up slowly. "She did what we should have done, what any decent person would have done, and now you want to throw her out. She's a cleaning woman, Harrison. She's more of a mother to Mason in one day than you've been in 2 years." The words hit Victoria like physical blows. She staggered back, her face crumbling. "That's not true. I love him. I love our son." "Then act like it." Harrison's voice broke. "For once in your life, Victoria, act like a mother instead of a brand." Silence stretched between them. Thick, poisonous, the death throes of a marriage that had been dying for years. Mason lifted his head from Grace's shoulder. He looked at his parents with eyes that held too much understanding for a 2-year-old. "Mama sad," he whispered. "Dada sad." Harrison's composure cracked completely. Tears streamed down his face as he looked at his son. "Yeah, buddy, we're sad, but we're going to make it better, I promise." "Stay?" Mason reached for his father with one hand while keeping the other firmly gripped on Grace's shirt. "Dada, stay. I'm not going anywhere." Harrison moved closer, wrapping his arms around both Mason and Grace. "Never again. I'm never leaving you again." Victoria watched them. The husband she'd neglected. The son she'd damaged. The stranger who'd seen what she'd refused to see. Her hand moved toward them, then stopped, then dropped to her side. She didn't know how to be part of something real. She'd spent so long building walls and brands and images that she'd forgotten how to just be human. "I'm sorry." The words came out barely audible. "I'm so sorry." No one answered. 45 minutes later, the door opened again. A woman in professional attire entered, followed by Dr. Chen. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrington, I'm Sarah Rodriguez from Child Protective Services. I need to speak with you both." Grace moved toward the corner, still holding Mason, trying to make herself invisible. "And you must be Grace Thompson." Sarah's eyes found her. "The woman who reported the situation." "Yes, ma'am." "I'll need to speak with you as well, but first..." She turned to the Harringtons. "I've reviewed the medical records that were provided. I've spoken with Dr. Chen. I've seen the photographs of your son's injuries." "They're not injuries." Victoria's voice was tight. They're pressure marks from clothing. It's not like we hit him or Mrs. Harrington." Sarah's voice was firm but not unkind. "Child neglect takes many forms. Failing to address a known medical condition because it conflicts with your professional schedule is neglect. The documentation is extensive." "What happens now?" Harrison asked. "Are you taking him? That depends." Sarah pulled out a folder. "I have the authority to remove Mason from your custody immediately based on what I've seen. However, I also have the discretion to implement supervised custody if I believe the parents are genuinely committed to change." Hope flickered in Harrison's eyes. "We are. I am. Whatever it takes." Sarah looked at Victoria. "Mrs. Harrington." Victoria's jaw tightened. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Grace watched her face, watched the battle between pride and love, between image and truth. "I'll do whatever is necessary." Victoria's voice came out stiff, formal, but beneath it, Grace heard something cracking. "He's my son. I can't lose him." "What you can't lose is the lifestyle he provides." Harrison's voice was bitter. "Tell the truth, Victoria, for once. You don't know what you're asking." "I'm asking you to be honest, to admit what you did, to take responsibility." Victoria's composure shattered. "I was terrified." The words exploded from her. "Is that what you want to hear? I was terrified every single day that I wasn't enough, that the brand would fail, that everything I'd built would collapse." She sank into a chair, her face in her hands. "I looked at Mason and I saw pressure, expectations, Another thing I had to be perfect at, and I couldn't handle it. I couldn't be a perfect mother and a perfect designer and a perfect wife. So I chose the thing I could control, the thing that came with metrics and results and applause. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. I chose wrong. I know I chose wrong, and my son is paying the price. Sarah's expression softened slightly. That's a start. A start. Victoria laughed bitterly. My son's spine is curved. My marriage is over. My career will probably implode once this gets out, and you're telling me it's a start. Mrs. Harrington, I've seen parents who never admit they did anything wrong, who blame everyone else, who fight us every step of the way while their children suffer. Sarah leaned forward. You just acknowledged your failure. You named it. That's more than most people can do. Grace watched this exchange in silence. Mason had fallen asleep against her shoulder, exhausted by the day's trauma. Here's what happens next. Sarah opened her folder. Mason remains with you, but under supervised custody. You'll both attend mandatory parenting classes. Your home will be inspected and modified to ensure all restrictive clothing is removed. Mason will receive physical therapy 3 times a week. A social worker will conduct unannounced visits for the next 6 months. And if we fail any of this, Harrison asked, then we revisit the custody arrangement. Sarah's voice was firm. I won't let this child be hurt again, not by anyone. What about her? Victoria looked at Grace. She broke into our things. She took photographs without permission. She essentially kidnapped our son. She saved your son. Sarah's voice cut through Victoria's accusation. Miss Thompson acted as a mandatory reporter when she discovered evidence of medical neglect. Her actions were not only justified, they were legally protected. Victoria's face twisted. So she faces no consequences for destroying our privacy. Mrs. Harrington. Sarah's patience visibly thinned. Your son's spine is curved. He has pressure injuries on his legs. He was in constant pain while 3 doctors told you what was wrong, and you chose to ignore them. The only person facing consequences here is you. Victoria fell silent. Ms. Thompson. Sarah turned to Grace. You'll need to provide a formal statement. We'll also need access to all the photographs and documentation you collected. Of course. Grace shifted Mason carefully. Whatever you need. And I have to ask, what are your intentions going forward? Do you plan to pursue legal action against the Harringtons? Grace looked at Mason sleeping peacefully for the first time in who knew how long. She looked at Harrison broken but trying. She looked at Victoria crumbling but finally honest. No? Grace's voice was quiet. I just wanted him to get help. He's getting help. That's all I needed. Harrison made a choked sound. After everything Victoria threatened you with, after what she said she'd do to your family, I didn't do this for revenge, Mr. Harrington. I did it because a child was hurting and no one else seemed to care. You could sue us. You could go to the press. I could do a lot of things. Grace met his eyes. But what good would it do? Your son needs his parents to get better, not to get destroyed. He needs a family to come home to, not a pile of lawsuits and headlines. Victoria looked up. Something shifted in her expression, something that might have been the beginning of respect. Why? Victoria's voice was raw. After how I treated you, after what I said, why would you protect us? Grace thought about her grandmother's words, about character, about doing what's right even when it costs you everything. Because my grandmother raised me to believe that people can change, that even the worst mistakes can be redeemed if someone's willing to do the work. She looked at Mason's sleeping face. And because this little boy needs his mother. Not the Victoria Harrington who puts him in designer clothes for photo shoots, the mother who sat in that car and cried because her son wanted a stranger more than her. Tears spilled down Victoria's cheeks. I don't know how to be that person. Then learn. Grace's voice was gentle but firm. You have resources. Get a therapist. Take the parenting classes seriously. Spend time with your son without cameras or schedules or brand requirements. Learn who he actually is instead of who you want him to be. And if I can't, then you lose him, for real this time, not to Child Protective Services, to himself. He'll grow up and remember that his mother chose her image over his health. He'll remember that a cleaning woman cared more about his pain than his own parents. Victoria flinched. But if you change, if you actually become the mother he needs, he'll remember that too. He'll remember that you made mistakes, but you fought to fix them. He'll remember that you chose him when it finally mattered. The room fell silent. Sarah was watching Grace with an expression of quiet respect. Harrison had his head bowed, while shoulders shaking with silent tears. Victoria stood up slowly. She walked toward Grace and Mason on unsteady legs. "May I?" Her voice trembled. "May I hold him?" Grace hesitated. She looked at Mason, still sleeping, his small hand gripping her shirt. Gently, support his back. She transferred the sleeping child into his mother's arms. Victoria held him like something precious and fragile. Her tears fell onto his hair. "I'm so sorry, baby," Victoria whispered against his forehead. "I'm so sorry. I'm going to do better. I promise. I'm going to be the mother you deserve." Mason stirred. His eyes opened confused and bleary. "Mama." "I'm here, baby. Mama's here." For a moment, fear flickered across his small face, the instinct to pull away. But Victoria didn't demand anything, didn't pose him, didn't adjust his clothes or fix his hair. She just held him. Tears streaming, finally seeing him. Mason studied his mother's face. Then slowly he relaxed against her chest. "Mama cry." "Yes, baby. Mama's crying, because Mama did something wrong, and she's very, very sorry." "Hurt stop." Victoria's voice broke completely. "We're going to make the hurt stop. I promise. The doctor is going to help, and Mama is going to take care of you, and the hurt is going to stop." Grace stepped back, watching this moment of raw, broken healing. Her job here was done. The child had been seen. The truth had come out. Whatever happened next, it was up to this family. "Ms. Thompson," Sarah touched her arm, "I need to get that formal statement. There's a room down the hall." Grace nodded. She started to follow Sarah toward the door. "Wait." Harrison's voice stopped her. He crossed the room in 3 strides and took both her hands in his. "Thank you." His voice shook with emotion. "I know it's not enough. I know words can't repay what you did. But thank you for seeing my son, for fighting for him, for giving us a chance to make this right." "Don't thank me." Grace squeezed his hands. "Just be better. Be the father he needs." "I will." Harrison's eyes held a promise. "I swear to you, I will." Grace nodded. She looked one last time at Mason, now calm in his mother's arms, for the first time in his young life. Then she followed Sarah Rodriguez out of the room to tell her story to people who finally wanted to hear it. 3 hours later, Grace walked out of Mount Sinai into the cold night air. Her formal statement had been taken. Her photos had been cataloged as evidence. She'd answered questions until her voice was hoarse and her mind was numb. Her phone showed 17 missed calls. Her grandmother, her neighbor Jerome, numbers she didn't recognize. She called Rosalie first. "Baby girl." Her grandmother's voice crackled with relief. "Lord, I've been worried sick. Where are you? What happened? Destiny won't stop asking when you're coming home." "I'm okay, Grandma. I'm at the hospital, but I'm okay." "The hospital? Are you hurt? Do I need to—" "Not for me. For the little boy, the one I told you about." Grace leaned against a concrete pillar, suddenly exhausted. "I did it, Grandma. I got him help. He's going to be okay." Silence on the line. Then softly, her grandmother began to cry. "I'm so proud of you, child. So proud." "I might have lost everything." Grace's voice cracked. "My job is definitely gone. Mrs. Harrington could still try to ruin me. The agency might blacklist me. I don't know what's going to happen. You did what was right. Everything else is in God's hands." "What if God's hands aren't enough to pay the rent?" Rosalie laughed through her tears. "Then we'll figure it out the way we always do, together, as a family." Grace closed her eyes. "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, baby girl. Now come home. Destiny's been drawing pictures for you all evening. She wants to hear about the brave thing her mama did." Grace ended the call. She stood alone in the hospital entrance, the cold seeping through her thin coat. She had nothing, no job, no references, no safety net. But she'd kept her promise to a little boy with sad eyes and a curved spine, and somehow that felt like everything. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Ms. Thompson, this is Harrison Harrington. I want to discuss your future. Please call me when you can." Grace stared at the message. She didn't know what it meant. Didn't know if it was an offer or a threat or something in between. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever came next, she would face it the same way she'd faced everything else. With courage. With faith. With the knowledge that the measure of a person isn't in their job title. It's in their character. And tonight her character had been tested. Tonight she had not been found wanting. Grace didn't sleep that night. She sat at her grandmother's kitchen table, staring at Harrison's text message until the words blurred. You need to eat something, child. Rosalie placed a bowl of soup in front of her. Starving yourself won't change what's coming. I don't know what's coming. Grace pushed the bowl away. That's the problem. Destiny appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, clutching a crayon drawing. 8 years old, with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin. Mama, are you okay? Grace forced a smile. I'm fine, baby. What do you have there? Destiny crossed the room and placed the drawing on the table. A woman with brown skin holding a small child, hearts floating around them. That's you and the little boy you saved. Destiny's voice was proud. Grandma told me what you did. Grace's throat tightened. She pulled her daughter into her arms and held on tight. Thank you, baby. It's beautiful. Are you a hero now? Grace laughed despite herself. I don't know about that. Grandma says you are. She says you were brave when everyone else was scared. Rosalie settled into her chair with a knowing smile. Out of the mouths of babes. Grace kissed her daughter's forehead. Go get ready for school. I'll walk you there this morning. Really? Destiny's face lit up. You never walk me anymore because of work. Today I will. Destiny ran off to get dressed. Grace turned back to her grandmother. I'm scared, Grandma. I'm really scared. I know, child, but scared is just another word for alive. You feel scared because you did something that mattered. Grace looked at the drawing her daughter had made, the woman holding the child, hearts everywhere. Maybe Destiny was right. Maybe she was a hero. Or maybe she was just unemployed. At 8:47 a.m., Grace walked her daughter to school. She held Destiny's hand the whole way, memorizing the feeling, wondering how many more mornings like this she could afford. At the school gates, Destiny hugged her tight. I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby. Learn something amazing today. I will. Destiny ran toward her friends, then stopped and turned back. Mama, that little boy is lucky you found him. Grace watched her daughter disappear into the school building. Then she pulled out her phone and dialed Harrison Harrington's number. He answered on the first ring. Miss Thompson, thank you for calling. What do you want, Mr. Harrington? I want to meet with you in person. There are things I need to say that can't be said over the phone. Grace's guard went up. If this is about silencing me... It's not. Harrison's voice was tired, defeated. Please, 1 hour of your time. I'll come to you if that's easier. Grace thought about her grandmother's cramped apartment, about bringing a millionaire into her world. There's a coffee shop on 142nd in Amsterdam. I can be there in 30 minutes. I'll be there. The call ended. Grace stood on the sidewalk, her breath forming clouds in the cold morning air. Whatever was coming, she would face it standing up. Harrison was already waiting when she arrived. He looked terrible. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, dark circles under his eye. The polished businessman she'd seen at the penthouse was gone. He stood when she approached. Ms. Thompson, thank you for coming. Grace? She slid into the booth across from him. If we're going to talk, you might as well use my name. Grace. He tested the word like it was foreign. I ordered you coffee. I hope that's okay. It's fine. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup but didn't drink. What do you want? Harrison took a deep breath. I want to apologize for everything Victoria said to you, for the threats, for treating you like you were less than human. That wasn't you. That was your wife. I let it happen. I stood by while she built walls around our family and pushed everyone away. I watched her turn our son into a brand ambassador instead of a child. I told myself it was fine because the money kept coming and I didn't have to deal with it. His voice cracked. I'm as guilty as she is. More maybe, because I saw what was happening and I looked away. Grace studied his face, looking for the manipulation, the angle, the rich person's trick of seeming vulnerable while still protecting their interests. She didn't find it. She found only a broken man trying to pick up the pieces. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve the truth, and because I need to ask you something. Here it comes, Grace thought. The real reason for this meeting. I need your help. Grace blinked. Excuse me. Mason trusts you. He responds to you in a way he doesn't respond to Victoria or me. The doctors say consistency and comfort are crucial for his recovery. Harrison's hands trembled around his coffee cup. I want to hire you, not as a cleaner, as Mason's caregiver. Grace's mind went blank. You want to hire me? Full-time. Benefits. Salary that actually reflects the importance of the work. I know it's strange given everything that's happened, but you're the only person my son reaches for, the only person who makes him feel safe. Mr. Harrington, Harrison, please, Harrison. Grace shook her head slowly. Your wife tried to destroy me yesterday. She threatened my family. She said she'd make sure I never worked again. And now you want me to come back into that house. She's struggling. The reality of what she did is hitting her hard, but she agreed to this. She suggested it, actually. Grace's eyebrows shot up. Victoria suggested hiring me. Last night, after you left the hospital, she said, Harrison's voice caught. She said that if Mason trusts you, then maybe she should learn from that. Maybe she should watch how you interact with him and figure out what she's been doing wrong. Grace sat back in the booth. Of all the things she'd expected from this meeting, this wasn't on the list. I need to think about it. Of course, take all the time you need. Harrison pulled an envelope from his jacket and slid it across the table. In the meantime, this is for you. Grace opened it. Inside was a check. She looked at the number and felt the blood drain from her face. This is $50,000. For what you did, for saving my son, for the job you lost because of us, for everything. I can't accept this. You can, you will. Harrison's voice was firm for the first time. You earned it, Grace. You earned every penny and more. Consider it a signing bonus if you take the job. Consider it compensation for wrongful termination if you don't. Either way, it's yours. Grace stared at the check. $50,000. Enough to pay off her grandmother's medical bills. Enough to breathe for the first time in years. Why? Her voice came out rough. After everything, why would you do this? Harrison looked at her with eyes that held too much pain. Because you taught me something yesterday. You showed me what it looks like when someone actually cares about a child. Not for cameras, not for brands, not for social media followers. You cared about Mason because he was hurting, and you couldn't stand to watch. He wiped his eyes roughly. I've spent 2 years in the same house as my son, and I never saw what you saw in 3 days. That's worth more than money can measure. But money is what I have to give. Grace folded the check carefully and placed it in her pocket. I'll think about the job. That's all I ask. She stood to leave, then stopped. How is he, Mason? Harrison's face softened. Better. The doctors are optimistic. They started physical therapy this morning. He cried at first, but then he asked where you were, kept calling you the nice lady. Grace's heart clenched. Tell him I said hello. I will. Harrison stood. Grace, whatever you decide, thank you for seeing him when no one else would. Grace walked out of the coffee shop into the cold morning light. The check in her pocket felt like possibility, like freedom, like the weight of impossible choices. She needed to talk to someone who understood, someone who'd navigated these waters before. She pulled out her phone and called Jerome Mitchell. Her neighbor answered on the third ring. Grace, everything okay? I need advice. Can you meet me? I'll put the coffee on. Come over whenever you're ready. 20 minutes later, Grace sat in Jerome's cluttered apartment surrounded by decades of memories. The retired social worker listened as she told him everything. The hospital, the CPS visit, Harrison's offer. When she finished, Jerome was quiet for a long moment. That's quite a situation you found yourself in. I don't know what to do. Grace rubbed her temples. Part of me wants to take the money and run, start fresh somewhere far from the Harringtons and their drama. And the other part keeps thinking about Mason, about how he reached for me, about what happens to him if I'm not there. Jerome nodded slowly. You know what I learned in 30 years of social work? What? Rich people break their children in expensive ways. Poor people break their children in cheap ways. But children get broken either way when the adults in their lives don't pay attention. He leaned forward. You paid attention, Grace. You saw what needed to be seen. The question now isn't whether you should help that child. The question is whether you can live with yourself if you don't. Grace closed her eyes. She thought about Destiny, about the sacrifices she'd made for her own daughter, about what she would want someone to do if Destiny was the one who needed help. I have to go back, don't I? That's not for me to say, but I will tell you this. Jerome placed his weathered hand over hers. Some people spend their whole lives looking for purpose. You found yours in the cry of a child you didn't even know. Don't run from that. It's a gift. Grace opened her eyes. What if Victoria makes my life hell? Then you document everything. You keep records. You protect yourself the same way you protected that boy. Jerome squeezed her hand. but I don't think that's going to happen. Why not? Because Victoria Harrington just watched a cleaning woman do something she couldn't do. She watched you comfort her son, earn his trust, see his pain. That woman is many things, but she's not stupid. She knows she needs to learn from you. Or she'll resent me for it. Maybe, probably, but resentment can become respect if you handle it right. Jerome sat back. Take the job, Grace. Take it for Mason. Take it for yourself. Take it because it's the right thing to do. Grace sat with his words, let them settle into her bones. I have to tell my grandmother and Destiny. They'll understand. They're your family. That's what families do. That evening, Grace gathered Rosalie and Destiny at the kitchen table. She told them about the check, about the job offer, about everything. Destiny spoke first. Does this mean you'll be taking care of the little boy? If I accept the job, yes. Will you still be home at night? Yes, baby. I'll always come home to you. Destiny thought about this. Then I think you should do it. He needs someone to take care of him. You're good at taking care of people. Rosalie reached across the table and took Grace's hand. Your daughter has wisdom beyond her years. Her eyes glistened. I raised you to follow your heart, child. What does your heart tell you? Grace looked at the check on the table, at her daughter's trusting face, at her grandmother's weathered hands. My heart tells me that little boy needs me, and I think maybe I need him too. Rosalie smiled. Then you have your answer. At 9:15 p.m., Grace dialed Harrison's number. I'll take the job, but I have conditions. Name them. I'm there for Mason, not for Victoria. If she interferes with his care, I walk. If she threatens me again, I walk. If she tries to put him in those clothes again, I don't just walk, I call CPS myself. Fair enough. What else? I need Saturdays off to spend with my daughter, non-negotiable. Done. And I want everything in writing. A real contract. No verbal agreements that can be denied later. I'll have my lawyer draw it up tomorrow. Harrison's voice held relief. Thank you, Grace. You won't regret this. We'll see about that. She ended the call and looked at her grandmother. It's done? I start Monday. Rosalie clasped her hands together. Lord have mercy, my granddaughter is going to work in a penthouse. Grace laughed despite herself. Don't get too excited. It's still the same people who threatened to destroy me. People can change, baby girl, even the worst ones, especially when their children are at stake. 3 days later, Grace returned to the Harrington penthouse. The doorman did a double take when he saw her. Miss Thompson, I thought you were fired. I was, now I'm back. In what capacity, if you don't mind me asking? I'm Mason's new caregiver. The doorman's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. Well, that's quite a turnaround. You have no idea. The elevator ride felt different this time. Grace wasn't a servant sneaking through service entrances. She was an employee with a contract and rights and a purpose. The doors opened to the familiar penthouse. But something had changed. The cold perfection was gone. Toys scattered across the floor. A blanket draped messily over the couch. Signs of actual life in a space that had felt like a museum. Harrison appeared from the hallway. Grace, you're here. I said I would be. I know, I just... He ran a hand through his hair. I wasn't sure if you'd change your mind. I don't make promises I don't intend to keep. No, Harrison smiled tiredly. No, you don't. A small voice called from upstairs. Nice lady here. Grace's heart melted. Is that Mason? He's been asking about you all morning. Victoria's with him now trying to well. You should probably see for yourself. Grace climbed the stairs she'd climbed so many times before, but this time she wasn't sneaking. She wasn't invisible. She belonged here now. The nursery door stood open. Inside, Victoria sat on the floor, with Mason trying to engage him with a toy. Look, sweetheart, it's a car. Vroom, vroom. Don't you want to play with the car? Mason ignored her. His eyes found Grace in the doorway, and his whole face transformed. Nice lady. He scrambled to his feet and ran toward her, his gait still unsteady, his spine still curved. Grace caught him and lifted him carefully into her arms. Hey, sweetheart, I missed you. Miss you too. Mason pressed his face into her shoulder. Stay now. Stay with Mason. I'm staying, baby. I'm not going anywhere. Victoria watched from the floor. Her face was a complicated mixture of jealousy, pain, and something that might have been relief. He hasn't smiled like that for me. Victoria's voice was quiet. Not once, not ever. Grace met her eyes. Then let's change that. How? By learning what he actually needs instead of what you think he should want. Victoria flinched, but she didn't argue. Teach me. The words seemed to cost her something. Please, teach me how to be his mother. Grace looked at this woman who had threatened her, belittled her, tried to destroy her. She saw the cracks in the armor, the desperation underneath, the mother buried beneath years of ambition and image. Stand up. Victoria stood. Come here. Victoria approached slowly like she was approaching something dangerous. Hold out your arms. Victoria extended her arms. Grace turned so Mason could see his mother. Mason, baby, Mama wants to hold you. Can you give her a hug? Mason looked at his mother. Fear flickered in his eyes, the memory of cold hands and painful clothes and being ignored. It's okay. Grace's voice was soft but firm. Mama's learning to be gentle. She's going to be better now. Can you show her how brave you are? Mason hesitated. Then slowly he reached toward Victoria. Victoria took him as if he were made of glass. Her hands trembled, her eyes filled with tears. Hi, baby, her voice cracked. Hi, my sweet boy. Mason studied her face, looking for the mother who ignored him, the mother who hurt him. He didn't find her. Mama soft? He whispered. Victoria laughed through her tears. Yes, baby, Mama's going to be soft from now on. Mama promises. Grace stepped back, watching this moment she hadn't expected. The first crack in a wall that had taken years to build. Maybe Jerome was right. Maybe people could change. Maybe even Victoria Harrington could learn to be a mother. But as Grace watched, she noticed something in Victoria's eyes. A flicker of the old pride, the old control. This wouldn't be easy. Victoria's transformation wasn't complete. The demons that had driven her to hurt her own son were still there, lurking beneath the surface. Grace would have to be vigilant. She would have to protect Mason not just from the obvious threats, but from the subtle ones too. From a mother learning to love who might slip back into old patterns at any moment. The real battle was just beginning, and Grace was ready to fight it. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of physical therapy sessions, doctor appointments, and slow, painstaking progress. Mason responded to treatment better than anyone expected. His spine began to straighten, his legs grew stronger, the marks on his skin faded, but the emotional healing was slower. He still flinched when Victoria reached for him suddenly. He still woke up crying in the night, reaching for Grace. Why does he love you more than me? Victoria asked one afternoon, her voice raw with pain. What do you do that I don't? Grace looked up from where she sat with Mason building blocks on the floor. I show up, every day, without expectations, without cameras, without needing him to be anything other than a 2-year-old kid who likes blocks and hates peas. I'm showing up now. Yes, but he remembers when you didn't. He remembers crying and no one coming. He remembers pain that never stopped. Grace kept her voice gentle. Trust takes time to build. You broke his trust over 2 years. It won't come back in 2 weeks. Victoria sank into a chair. What if it never comes back? Then you keep showing up anyway. You keep being patient. You keep proving that you've changed. Grace met her eyes. That's what real love looks like. It doesn't give up when it's hard. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. No one's ever talked to me like you do. Like what? Like I'm not perfect. Like I need to change. A bitter laugh. Everyone in my life tells me what I want to hear. Even Harrison, especially Harrison. Do you want me to lie to you? No. Victoria's voice was firm. I want you to tell me the truth, even when it hurts. That's what Mason needs. That's what I need. Grace nodded slowly. Then here's some truth. You're getting better. The way you held him this morning, the way you read to him at nap time, that was real. That was good. But you still check your phone too much. You still tense up when he cries. I still have moments where I can see the old Victoria wanting to take over. I'm trying. I know, and trying matters. But trying isn't the same as succeeding. Keep trying until it becomes natural. Until you don't have to remind yourself to be patient. Until loving him is easier than performing for him. Victoria absorbed this. How long did it take you to be this kind of mother? Grace laughed softly. I'm still learning, every day. My daughter is 8, and I still mess up constantly. The difference is that I fix it. I apologize. I do better the next time. You make it sound simple. It is simple. It's just not easy. Mason looked up from his blocks. Mama play. Both women froze. Mason had directed the question at Victoria. First time he'd ever invited her to play. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Yes, baby. Mama would love to play. She slid off the chair and sat on the floor beside him. Her designer clothes would be ruined. Her hair would get messed up. Her carefully constructed image would crumble. She didn't care. "What are we building?" Victoria asked. "Tower?" Mason handed her a block. "Big tower. Touch the sky." "Then let's make it the biggest tower ever." Grace watched them build together. Mother and son, broken and healing, learning each other for the first time. It wasn't perfect. Victoria still moved too fast, sometimes still tried to control too much, but she caught herself. She slowed down. She let Mason lead. Progress. Real progress. Grace's phone buzzed. A text from Harrison. "CPS social worker coming for unannounced visit. 30 minutes. Thought you should know." Grace's stomach tightened. These visits determined everything. One bad report and Mason could be removed from the home. "Victoria," Grace kept her voice calm. "Sarah Rodriguez is coming in 30 minutes. Victoria's face went pale. "The social worker? Yes, unannounced visit? But we're not ready. The house isn't. I haven't. Stop." Grace put a hand on her arm. "Look around. What do you see?" Victoria looked. Toys on the floor, blocks scattered, a happy child playing with his mother. "I see a mess." "You see a home. You see a family. I see everything Sarah wants to see." Grace squeezed her arm. "Just be who you've been for the last 15 minutes. Don't perform. Don't clean up. Don't put Mason in fancy clothes. Just be real." Victoria took a shaky breath. "What if it's not enough?" "It will be, because for the first time in your life, it's true." Sarah Rodriguez arrived exactly 30 minutes later. She walked through the penthouse with sharp eyes, noting everything. The toys on the floor, the comfortable clothes Mason wore, the way he played freely without restriction. "Mason?" Sarah crouched down to his level. "Do you remember me?" Mason looked up. "Dr. Lady?" "Close enough." Sarah smiled. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "Good, playing with Mama." He held up a block. "Building tower." Sarah's eyebrows rose slightly. She looked at Victoria, who sat on the floor with her sun designer dress, wrinkled hair, mussed face free of makeup. "Mrs. Harrington, you look different." "I feel different." Victoria's voice was steady. "I've been learning how to actually be present. Grace has been teaching me." Sarah turned to Grace. "Ms. Thompson, how would you assess the situation since your last meeting?" Grace chose her words carefully. "There's been significant progress. Mason is responding well to physical therapy. His spine is showing improvement, and Mrs. Harrington has made genuine efforts to change her parenting approach. Any concerns?" Grace hesitated. She could feel Victoria's eyes on her, waiting, hoping. Old patterns take time to break. There have been moments of regression, but the overall trajectory is positive. Sarah nodded, making notes. "Mr. Harrington mentioned you're now employed as Mason's caregiver." "That's correct." "How do you feel about that arrangement, given the history?" Grace looked at Mason happily building his tower, at Victoria watching her son with something like wonder. "I feel like it's where I need to be. Mason trusts me, and I trust that his parents are committed to change." Sarah finished her notes and stood. "I'll be honest with you all. When I took this case, I expected the worst. Wealthy, family image-obsessed mother documented neglect. I've seen too many like it." She looked around the room again. "This isn't what I expected. This looks like a family trying to heal. That doesn't erase what happened, but it matters. It matters a great deal." Victoria's voice came out small. "Does that mean... Are you going to take him?" "Not today." Sarah closed her folder. "Your supervised custody continues. I'll be back for another visit in 3 weeks. If progress continues, we can discuss reducing oversight." Relief flooded the room. Victoria's shoulders sagged. Harrison, who had appeared in the doorway, leaned against the frame like his legs couldn't hold him. "Thank you." Victoria's voice cracked. "Thank you for giving us a chance." "Don't thank me. Thank yourselves for taking it." Sarah headed toward the door, then paused. "And thank Ms. Thompson. Whatever she's doing, keep doing it." After Sarah left, the penthouse fell silent. Mason continued playing, oblivious to the weight of what had just happened. Harrison crossed the room and pulled Victoria into his arm. She collapsed against him, sobbing. "We almost lost him." Her voice was muffled. "We almost lost our son." "But we didn't." Harrison held her tighter. "Because we changed, because we listened, because Grace showed us what we were too blind to see." Grace gathered her things quietly. This moment belonged to them, to the family learning to be a family. Grace, Victoria's voice stopped her at the door. Stay, please, have dinner with us. Grace hesitated. I don't want to intrude. You're not intruding. Victoria wiped her eyes. You're part of this now, part of our family. Please stay. Grace looked at Mason, who had abandoned his tower to toddle toward her. Nice lady, stay, eat dinner. She couldn't say no to that face. Okay, I'll stay. That night, they ate together at the enormous dining table that had probably never held a real family meal. The food was simple. The conversation was simpler. Mason sat in a high chair between Grace and Victoria, smashing peas with obvious delight. He hates peas, Victoria said. How did I not know that? Because you never watched him eat. Grace's voice was gentle. You were always somewhere else. I was an idiot. You were lost. Grace handed Mason a piece of bread. There's a difference. Victoria watched her son demolish the bread with enthusiastic glee. I don't know how to thank you for everything, for saving him, for staying, for teaching me how to be human again. You can thank me by not going back, by remembering this moment the next time someone waves a camera in your face, by choosing him over everything else every single time. Victoria nodded slowly. I will. I swear I will. Grace believed her. Maybe not completely, maybe not forever, but enough for now, enough to hope. After dinner, Grace said her goodbyes. Mason cried when she left, but it was different now. Not the hopeless crying of before. This was the crying of a child who knew she would come back. Bye-bye, nice lady. Bye-bye, sweet boy. I'll see you tomorrow. Promise? Promise. She walked out into the cold night air, her heart full of something she couldn't quite name. Her phone rang. Jerome's number. Hey, old man, what's up? Grace? Jerome's voice was strange, tight. Have you seen the news? No? Why? Turn on your TV, Channel 7, now. Grace hurried home. She burst through the door, grabbed the remote, found Channel 7. A reporter stood outside a building she recognized. The Harrington Fashion Headquarters. Breaking news tonight. Victoria Harrington, founder of the Harrington Fashion Empire, is under investigation by the Department of Labor for alleged violations of child labor laws. Sources say the investigation stems from concerns about the use of her 2-year-old son in commercial advertising campaigns. Grace's blood ran cold. Additionally, 3 former employees have come forward with allegations of workplace abuse and hostile conditions. This developing story comes just weeks after an undisclosed incident involving the Harrington family and Child Protective Services. The reporter continued, but Grace couldn't hear anymore. The truth was out. Not all of it, but enough. Someone had leaked information about Mason, about the investigation, about everything. Her phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. They know. Everyone knows. Please come back. I need you. Grace stared at the message. The careful progress of the last 2 weeks. The hope she'd allowed herself to feel. All of it teetering on the edge of collapse. Because the world was about to learn what Victoria Harrington had done to her own son, and nothing would ever be the same, and Grace ran back through the cold streets. Her lungs burned. Her phone buzzed with messages she didn't have time to read. The penthouse lobby was chaos when she arrived. Reporters crowded the entrance. Camera flashes exploded in the darkness. Security guards formed a human wall. Ms. Thompson. A reporter shoved a microphone in her face. Are you the woman who reported Victoria Harrington to CPS? Is it true you were fired for discovering abuse? Grace pushed through without answering. The doorman grabbed her arm and pulled her inside. Service elevator, go, now. She ran. The service elevator crawled upward. Grace's heart pounded against her ribs. She counted the floors. 15, 16, 17. The doors opened to pandemonium. Harrison paced the living room phone pressed to his ear, shouting at someone about lawyers and statements and damage control. Victoria sat curled on the couch. Mascara running down her face, clutching Mason like he might disappear. Grace? Victoria's voice cracked. Thank God. Grace crossed the room and knelt in front of her. What happened? Who leaked? I don't know. The news just exploded. Everyone's calling. My publicist. My investors. People I haven't spoken to in years. Victoria's hands shook violently. They're saying I abused my son. They're saying I used him like a prop. Did you? The question hung in the air like a blade. Victoria's face crumpled. Yes, not the way they're saying it, but yes, I did exactly what they're accusing me of. Then you need to own it. What? Grace took Victoria's hands. Right now, you have 2 choices. You can fight this hire lawyer, spin the story, try to make yourself look like a victim. And you might win. You have the money for it. Or you can tell the truth, all of it. Take responsibility. Show people who you're becoming instead of defending who you were. Victoria stared at her. That would destroy me. No, that would free you. Harrison appeared beside them. The phone finally lowered. She's right. Harrison, I just got off with our crisis management team. They want us to deny everything, blame the sources, attack the credibility of the former employees. His jaw tightened. I fired them. You fired our crisis team. They wanted us to lie, to keep lying, to build more walls around more secrets. Harrison sat down heavily. I'm done with walls, Victoria. I'm done with secrets. Our son almost lost his ability to walk because we cared more about image than truth. Victoria pressed her face into Mason's hair. The child had gone quiet, sensing the tension, his small body tense with fear. Mama said, his voice was tiny. Mama's scared, Victoria sobbed. Yes, baby, Mama's scared. Why scared? Because Mama did something wrong. And now everyone knows. Mason reached up with one small hand and patted his mother's wet cheek. Okay, Mama, love you anyway. Something shattered in Victoria's eyes. The last wall, the final defense. Oh, God. She clutched her son tighter. Oh, God, I don't deserve you. Grace stood up. You need to make a statement, tonight, before this spirals further. And say what? The truth, everything, how it started, why it happened, what you're doing to change. Grace met her eyes firmly. And you need to apologize. Publicly, not the kind of apology that blames circumstances or explains away responsibility, a real apology that admits you were wrong. No one apologizes like that, not in this world. Then be the first. Victoria looked at Harrison, at Mason, at Grace. Will you help me write it? No. Grace shook her head. This has to come from you, in your words, from your heart. I can tell you if it sounds real, but I can't make it real for you. Victoria wiped her eyes. Her hands still trembled, but something had shifted in her posture. A decision being made. Get me a pen and paper. I need to think. The next 3 hours were the longest of Grace's life. Victoria wrote, crossed out, started over, wrote again. Pages piled up on the floor like fallen leaves. Harrison handled the logistics. He called their lawyer not for damage control, but for legal review. He arranged for a videographer to come to the penthouse. He fielded calls from investors and board members and said the same thing to all of them. Victoria will address everything in her statement. Please wait. Grace took care of Mason. She bathed him, fed him, put him to bed. She read him 3 stories and sang 2 lullabies and stayed until his breathing deepened into sleep. When she came back downstairs, Victoria was standing by the window, a single sheet of paper in her hands. I think it's ready. Grace crossed to her. Read it to me. Victoria's voice shook as she began. My name is Victoria Harrington. You know me as a designer, a businesswoman, a brand. Tonight I'm speaking to you as something I should have been from the beginning, a mother. She paused, steadied herself. 2 weeks ago, my son Mason was taken to the hospital with a curved spine and pressure injuries on his body. These injuries were caused by restrictive clothing I made him wear, day after day, month after month, for photo shoots, for social media, for my brand. Victoria's voice cracked, but she kept going. I knew something was wrong. I had medical reports telling me to stop. I ignored them because Fashion Week was coming, because my career felt more important than my child's health. Tears ran down her face. I was wrong, completely unforgivably wrong. I don't expect your forgiveness. I'm not sure I deserve it, but I want you to know what I've learned. She looked up at Grace, then back down at the paper. I learned that a child is not a prop, not a brand extension, not a tool for likes and followers. A child is a person who trusts you completely and depends on you entirely. I violated that trust. I failed that dependency. I also learned that change is possible. A woman named Grace Thompson, who worked in my home as a cleaner, saw what I refused to see. She risked everything to help my son. She taught me that the measure of a person isn't in their job title. It's in their character. Victoria's voice dropped to a whisper. I'm closing my children's fashion line. Permanently. I'm stepping back from public appearances to focus on being the mother Mason deserves. I'm undergoing parenting counseling and therapy to understand how I became someone capable of hurting my own child. To my son, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every day you cried and I didn't come. I'm sorry for every outfit that hurt you. I'm sorry for making you a product instead of loving you as my child. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." Victoria lowered the paper. Her whole body shook. "Is it enough?" Grace was crying too. She hadn't realized it until now. "It's real? That's what matters. But is it enough?" "I don't know." Grace wiped her eyes. "I don't think anything can ever be enough for what happened, but it's a start, an honest start." The videographer arrived at 11:47 p.m. Victoria sat in front of the camera, no makeup, no styling, no professional lighting, just a mother in a wrinkled sweater with red-rimmed eyes and trembling hands. She read her statement without looking at the paper. She'd memorized it. Every word. When she finished, she looked directly into the camera. "I know many of you will hate me after this. I understand. I hate myself too. But I'm asking for the chance to become someone different, someone better, someone my son can be proud of." She paused. "And to Grace Thompson, if you're here watching this, thank you. For seeing Mason when I couldn't. For fighting for him when I wouldn't. You are the hero of this story. Not me. Never me." The video went live at 12:03 a.m. Within an hour, it had been viewed 2 million times. Within 2 hours, 10 million. By morning, it was everywhere. Grace watched the reaction unfold from her grandmother's apartment. Rosalie sat beside her holding her hand. "People are talking about you, baby girl." Rosalie's voice was soft. "They're calling you a hero." "I'm not a hero. I just did what anyone would do." "No." Rosalie squeezed her hand. "You did what most people only wish they would do. There's a difference." Grace's phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. "Hello? Ms. Thompson, this is Catherine Wells from Good Morning America. We'd love to have you on the show to tell your side of the story." "I don't have a side. I just saw a child who needed help." "That's exactly the kind of story our viewers want to hear. We could—" "I'm sorry, I'm not interested." She hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. "Ms. Thompson, this is Marcus Reynolds from CNN. We're doing a segment on—" She hung up again. The phone kept ringing. NBC, ABC, The New York Times, The Washington Post, names she only knew from television. Finally, she turned the phone off. "I don't want to be famous." Grace looked at her grandmother. "I just want to take care of Mason and go home to my family every night." "Then that's what you'll do." Rosalie patted her hand. "Let the world spin however it wants. You stay true to yourself." At 8:30 a.m., Grace returned to the penthouse. The reporters had mostly dispersed, replaced by a single pool camera and a handful of stragglers. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted again. Harrison sat at the kitchen table laptop open, reading through comments on Victoria's video. 50-50, his voice was exhausted. Half think she's genuine, half think it's a PR stunt. "What do you think?" "I think she meant every word." He looked up at Grace. "I watched her write it. I watched her break down a dozen times. That wasn't performance, that was a woman finally facing herself." "Where is she?" "Upstairs, with Mason. She's been with him since dawn." Grace climbed the stairs quietly. The nursery door was open. Victoria lay on the floor beside Mason, watching him stack blocks, not directing, not correcting, just watching. "The red one goes there, Mama." Mason pointed. "Whatever you think is best, sweetheart." "You do it." Victoria picked up the red block. Her hand hovered over the tower. "Where should I put it?" "There." Mason pointed. "Next to the blue." Victoria placed it carefully. The tower wobbled, but held. "Good job, Mama." Mason clapped his small hands. "Good job." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, baby." Grace leaned against the doorframe, watching. This was what healing looked like. Small moments, gentle victories. A mother learning to let her child lead. "Grace." Victoria had noticed her. "Did you see the video? I saw it. Did it help? Do you think it will make a difference? As I think it already has." Grace entered the room and sat down on the floor with them. "Harrison says the reaction is split. Half hate me. Half are willing to give you a chance. That's more than you had yesterday." Victoria nodded slowly. "The lawyers called this morning. The Department of Labor investigation is moving forward. There might be fines, possibly criminal charges." "How do you feel about that?" "Terrified." Victoria laughed bitterly, but also relieved. "Does that make sense? Like I've been waiting for punishment for so long that finally facing it feels like freedom." "That makes sense." "I told Harrison I'll plead guilty to whatever they charge me with. No fighting, no deals. Whatever the consequence is, I'll accept it." Grace studied her face, looking for the crack, the deception, the old Victoria hiding beneath the surface. She didn't find it. That's brave. It's not brave. It's necessary. Victoria watched Mason stack another block. I can't teach him accountability if I don't practice it myself. A phone rang somewhere in the apartment. Footsteps. Harrison's voice calling up the stairs. Victoria, it's Sarah Rodriguez. She wants to talk to both of us. Victoria's face went pale. CPS, oh God. Don't panic. Grace touched her arm. You knew there would be follow-up. Just tell her the truth. They gathered in the living room. Harrison put the phone on speaker. Mr. and Mrs. Harrington. Sarah's voice was professional, but not cold. I've seen Victoria's video statement. I've also seen the news coverage and the public response. Are you taking Mason? Victoria's voice cracked. Please don't take him. I know I made mistakes, but I'm changing. I'm trying so hard to... Mrs. Harrington, let me finish. Victoria fell silent. The video statement was unexpected. In my experience, people in your position hire lawyers and PR teams. They deny, deflect, defend. They do not go on camera and admit to everything with no filter and no protection. I couldn't keep lying. Not anymore. I believe you. Sarah's voice softened slightly. Which is why I'm recommending that supervised custody continue rather than escalating to removal. However, the Department of Labor investigation adds complications. If criminal charges are filed, we'll need to reassess. Harrison spoke. What do we need to do in the meantime? Continue therapy. Continue physical therapy for Mason. Continue demonstrating genuine change. And I'd recommend keeping Ms. Thompson in her current role. Mason's progress is directly connected to her presence. She's not going anywhere. Victoria looked at Grace. She's family now. I'm glad to hear that. Sarah paused. One more thing. Several media outlets have reached out to me for comment. I've declined, but I want you to know that if the press pressure continues, it might be wise to give a limited, controlled interview rather than letting speculation run wild. I'll think about it. Please do. I'll be in touch next week for another visit. The call ended. Victoria collapsed against the couch like her strings had been cut. She's not taking him. Her voice was barely audible. She's not taking him. Harrison pulled her into his arms. We're going to get through this, all of us, together. Grace quietly gathered her things. This was a family moment. She didn't belong in the middle of it. Grace? Victoria's voice stopped her. Where are you going? I thought you'd want some privacy. No. Victoria stood still, shaky, still tear-stained. Please stay. You're part of this, part of us. I meant what I said in the video. You're the hero of this story. I'm not a hero. You are to Mason, and to me. Victoria crossed the room and took Grace's hands. You could have walked away 100 times, after I threatened you, after I tried to destroy you, after the world found out and you could have sold your story for a fortune. I'm not interested in fortunes. I know, that's why you're a hero. Victoria squeezed her hands. I want to do something for you, something real. Not just money, though, that's there too, something that matters. Taking care of Mason is enough. It's not enough for me. Victoria's eyes burned with intensity. You have a daughter, Destiny Wright, 8 years old. Yes. I want to set up an education fund, full scholarship, whatever school she wants through whatever degree she wants. No strings, no obligations, just a gift from a woman who's trying to learn how to be better. Grace's throat tightened. That's too much. It's not enough. It will never be enough. Victoria's voice broke. But it's something. Please let me do something. Grace thought about Destiny, about the sacrifices she'd made, about the dreams she'd put on hold because there was never enough money, never enough time, never enough anything. Okay, her voice came out rough. For Destiny, not for me. For both of you. Victoria pulled her into a hug. Thank you for everything, for seeing my son, for saving him, for staying when you had every reason to run. Grace held her awkwardly at first, then slowly she relaxed into it. Maybe this was healing too, not just for Mason, for all of them. The next few days passed in a blur of interviews, investigations, and incremental progress. Victoria gave one carefully managed interview to a respected journalist. No softballs, no easy questions. She answered everything with the same brutal honesty she'd shown in her video. Did you know you were hurting your son? Yes, I knew and I made excuses. Why? Because I was terrified of failure. Because I'd built my identity around my career, because somewhere along the way I forgot that being a mother was more important than being a brand. What changed? A woman named Grace Thompson saw what I couldn't see. She risked everything to save my son. She showed me what real courage looks like." The interview aired. The public response shifted further. Not forgiveness, but understanding. Not approval, but acknowledgement that change was possible. Mason continued his physical therapy. His spine straightened a little more each week. His legs grew stronger. The marks on his skin faded to memories. And slowly, tentatively, he began to trust his mother again. Mama read. He held up a book one evening. Victoria looked at Grace, eyes wide. "He wants me to read to him. He wants you? Go?" Victoria took the book with trembling hands. She sat in the rocking chair. Mason climbed into her lap without prompting. "What story do you want, baby?" "The bear one, about the mama bear and baby bear." Victoria began to read. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. Mason snuggled against her chest thumb in his mouth, eyes growing heavy. Grace watched from the doorway. This was the moment she'd been working toward, the moment that made everything worth it. A mother holding her child, reading a story, being present. Simple, beautiful, real. Her phone buzzed, a text from Destiny. "Mama, when are you coming home? I miss you." Grace smiled. Some things never changed. "On my way, baby. Save me some dinner." She said quiet goodbyes and slipped out of the penthouse. The elevator descended, through floors of wealth and privilege, carrying her back to her real life. Outside, the night air was cold and clean. The reporters were gone. The crisis was fading. The world was moving on to its next scandal. But for one little boy with a curved spine and sad eyes, everything had changed. And for one cleaning woman who refused to look away, everything had changed too. Grace walked toward the subway, her heart full of something she couldn't quite name. Hope, maybe. Or peace. Or the quiet satisfaction of knowing you'd done what was right when it mattered most. Her grandmother was waiting when she got home. So was Destiny, who threw herself into Grace's arms the moment she walked through the door. "Mama, you're home?" "I'm home, baby. I'm home." Rosalie watched them with knowing eyes. Long day. Long few weeks. Grace sat down at the kitchen table, Destiny in her lap. "But I think we're through the worst of it." "How's the little boy?" "Getting better. His mama read to him tonight. First time ever." Rosalie smiled. "That's something beautiful." "Yeah." Grace kissed the top of Destiny's head. "Yeah, it really is." "What happens now?" Grace thought about the question, about the road ahead, about all the challenges still to come. "Now we keep going, one day at a time, one step at a time, the same way we've always done." Rosalie nodded. "That's all any of us can do." The kitchen fell into comfortable silence. Destiny chattered about school. Rosalie made tea. Grace let herself rest for the first time in weeks. This was her life. Small apartment, complicated job, family that loved her no matter what. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. But it was hers. And right now, in this moment, it was perfect. 3 weeks later, Victoria stood before a judge. The Department of Labor had filed charges, violations of child labor laws, failure to provide a safe working environment. The evidence was overwhelming. Victoria pleaded guilty to everything. The judge studied her over his glasses. "Mrs. Harrington, you understand that a guilty plea carries significant consequences." "Yes, Your Honor. You've waived your right to a trial. You've accepted full responsibility. Is this your decision made freely and voluntarily?" "Yes, Your Honor, it is." "Why?" Victoria straightened her shoulders. "Because I did what they're accusing me of. I hurt my son. I violated the law. I deserve whatever consequence you decide." The judge was quiet for a long moment. "In my 30 years on the bench, I've seen a lot of wealthy defendants. Most of them fight. Most of them lie. Most of them hire armies of lawyers to make their problems disappear." He leaned forward. "You're not doing any of that." "Why?" "Because my son is watching." Victoria's voice cracked. "Not literally, but everything I do from now on, he'll eventually know about. I want him to know that his mother faced her mistakes, that she didn't hide, that she took responsibility." The judge nodded slowly. "Mrs. Harrington, I'm sentencing you to 2 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and mandatory participation in a parenting education program. I'm also ordering you to establish a nonprofit foundation dedicated to child welfare to be funded by no less than $2 million over the next 5 years. Victoria exhaled. "Thank you, Your Honor." "Don't thank me yet." The judge's voice hardened. "If you violate any term of this sentence, if you reoffend in any way, you will serve time, real time, in a real prison. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Then we're done here. He banged his gavel. Court is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Harrison shielded Victoria as they pushed toward the waiting car. Victoria, how do you feel about the sentence? Grateful. Victoria paused long enough to answer. I deserve worse. The judge was merciful. What's next for you? Being a mother. That's all that matters now. They made it to the car. The door closed on the chaos. Victoria collapsed against the seat. It's over. Her voice was hollow. It's actually over. Harrison took her hand. The legal part is over. The rest is just beginning. I know. Victoria looked out the window. I know. That evening, Grace arrived at the penthouse for her regular shift. She found Victoria in the nursery sitting on the floor watching Mason sleep. He looks peaceful. Grace sat down beside her. He does. Victoria's voice was soft. I used to watch him sleep and think about photo angles, about lighting, about how to capture his face for maximum engagement. And now I just watch him breathe. Victoria wiped her eyes. I watch him breathe and I thank God that I didn't destroy him completely. You didn't destroy him at all. He's healing. He's happy. Because of you. Because of all of us. Grace touched her arm. You're part of his healing too, Victoria. The work you've done these past weeks. The changes you've made. He sees that. He feels it. Victoria turned to look at her. Do you really believe people can change? Fundamentally, completely change who they are? Grace thought about the question, about everything she'd seen, about everything she'd learned. I believe we're not fixed things. We're works in progress. Every day we get to choose who we want to be. She met Victoria's eyes. You made bad choices for a long time. Now you're making better ones. That's not just change. That's growth. Victoria nodded slowly. My therapist says I need to forgive myself eventually, that I can't keep punishing myself forever. Your therapist is right. But how? How do I forgive myself for what I did to my own child? Grace looked at Mason, peaceful in his crib, his spine straightening a little more each day, his trust in his mother growing a little stronger each week. You forgive yourself by becoming someone worth forgiving, by proving every day that you're different, by loving him so well that the past stops mattering. Will it ever stop mattering? The pain will fade. The lessons won't. Grace stood up slowly. That's how healing works. We don't forget. We transform. We take our worst moments and turn them into wisdom. Victoria stood too. I want to do something tomorrow, something important. Will you help me? What is it? I want to take Mason to the park, a real park, with other children, without cameras or schedules or expectations. Victoria's voice trembled. I've never done that, not once. I don't even know how. Grace smiled. Then tomorrow we'll learn together. The next morning was Saturday, Grace's day off, but she came to the penthouse anyway. Victoria waited in the lobby, dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, no makeup, hair, and a ponytail. She looked terrified. I don't know if I can do this. You can. Grace handed her Mason's diaper bag. You're his mother. You've got this. They walked to Central Park. Mason toddled between them, one hand in Grace's, one hand in Victoria's. Bird? He pointed at a pigeon. Big Bird. That's right, baby. Victoria crouched down to his level. It's a pigeon. Can you say pigeon? Pie gun? Perfect. You're so smart. They reached the playground. Other children ran and climbed and laughed. Mason's eyes went wide with wonder. Play? He looked up at Victoria. Mason play. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Yes, baby, Mason play. She let go of his hand. He ran toward the sandbox, unsteady but determined, his legs growing stronger with every step. Victoria watched him with an expression Grace had never seen before. Pure love. Uncomplicated. Unrestricted. He's running. Victoria's voice broke. Grace, he's running. He is. 2 months ago he couldn't straighten his legs, and now he's running. Now he's free? Mason fell down. He got back up. He fell again. He laughed and kept going. Victoria moved to help him, then stopped herself. He doesn't need me to catch him. No, Grace smiled. He needs you to watch him fly. They stood together, two women from different worlds, watching a little boy discover what it felt like to be a child. And in that moment, everything that had come before the pain, the conflict, the fear, all of it faded away. There was only this, a mother watching her son, learning to let go, learning to love. Victoria reached over and took Grace's hand. "Thank you." Her voice was barely a whisper. "For everything." Grace squeezed back. "Thank you for listening." Mason looked back at them from the sandbox. His face was covered in dirt, his clothes were a mess, and he was smiling. Really, truly smiling, for the first time in his life. 6 months had passed since that day in the park. 6 months of physical therapy and parenting classes and slow, steady healing. 6 months that had transformed everyone they touched. Grace arrived at the penthouse on a crisp autumn morning the same way she had every day since this all began. But today felt different. Today the air crackled with something she couldn't name. "Grace?" Mason came running the moment she stepped off the elevator. Running, full speed, his legs strong and straight, his spine no longer curved, his face bright with joy. "Grace, Grace, Grace." She caught him and swung him up into her arms. "Good morning, sweetheart. Someone's excited today." "Mama says special day." Mason bounced in her arms. "Big surprise." "A surprise? What kind of surprise?" "Can't tell." Mason put his finger to his lips. "Secret." Victoria appeared from the hallway. She looked nothing like the woman Grace had met 8 months ago. No designer armor, no perfect makeup, no cold distance in her eyes. She wore yoga pants and a loose sweater, her hair in a messy bun, her face showing every line and every year and every hard-won smile. "He's been like this since he woke up." Victoria's voice held warmth Grace had once thought impossible. "Couldn't even eat breakfast. Too excited." "What's happening?" "You'll see." Victoria took a breath. "But first I need to tell you something. Can we sit?" They settled on the couch. Mason wiggled between them, unable to contain his energy. "Grace, I've been thinking a lot about these past 6 months, about everything you've done, everything you've sacrificed." Victoria's voice grew thick. "You gave up your anonymity. You gave up your privacy. You turned down 100 interviews that would have made you famous." "I told you, I don't want to be famous." "I know, that's what makes you extraordinary." Victoria took Grace's hands. "But I want you to know that I see it. I see what you've done, and I want to do something to honor that." Grace tensed. "Victoria, you've already done so much. The education fund for Destiny, the salary, This is different." Victoria glanced at Harrison, who had appeared in the doorway. He nodded. "We've been working on something, for months, a project that started because of you." "What kind of project?" Victoria stood up. "Come with me. I want to show you." They took the elevator to the ground floor. A black car waited outside. Grace climbed in with confusion growing in her chest. "Where are we going?" "You'll see." The car wound through Manhattan streets, heading downtown. Grace watched familiar neighborhoods pass by, then unfamiliar ones. Then they pulled up in front of a building she'd never seen before. A large banner hung across the entrance. "The Grace Thompson Center for Family Wellness." Grace's breath stopped. "What is this?" Victoria took her hand. "Come inside." The building was alive with activity. Social workers at desks, children playing in a supervised area, parents meeting with counselors, a medical clinic in the back, a resource center filled with food and clothing and supplies. "This is a community center." Victoria's voice was quiet. "For families in crisis, for children who need protection, for mothers who are struggling and don't know where to turn." Grace couldn't speak. Her throat had closed completely. "It's fully funded for 10 years. Free services for everyone who walks through the door, childcare, medical care, legal aid, job training, everything a family might need to get back on their feet." "You named it after me. You saved my son's life." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to save other children in your name." Grace turned in a slow circle, taking in the scope of what she was seeing. The families being helped, the children being protected, the lives being changed. "This is too much." Her voice came out broken. "This is way too much." "It's not enough." Victoria gripped her hands. "It will never be enough. But it's something. Something real. Something that will help people for years after we're gone." A woman approached them, young, tired, holding a toddler on her hip. Her clothes were worn. Her eyes held the exhaustion of someone fighting to survive. "Excuse me." Her voice was hesitant. "Are you Grace Thompson?" "The one this place is named after." Grace wiped her eyes. "Yes, that's me." "I wanted to thank you." The woman's chin trembled. "I've been homeless for 3 months, me and my daughter. This place gave us a safe room. They're helping me find a job. They're making sure my baby gets her vaccines." She bounced the toddler gently. "I saw the news. What you did for that little boy, how you stood up when no one else would." Her voice cracked. "You gave people like me hope. Hope that someone might see us too." Grace pulled the woman into a hug. The toddler between them cooed happily. "What's your name, Maria?" "Maria, you're going to be okay. You and your daughter. I know it feels impossible right now, but you're going to make it." "Because of places like this," Maria wiped her eyes. "Because of people like you." Grace held her for a long moment, then stepped back and looked at Victoria. "How many families are you helping?" "Right now, about 50, but we're expanding. We're opening a second location in the Bronx next month, a third in Brooklyn by spring." "How is that possible?" "Because once the word got out about what we were doing, donations started pouring in. People who saw my video, people who read your story, people who wanted to be part of something that mattered." Victoria smiled through her tears. "You started something, Grace. Something bigger than either of us." Grace walked through the center, stopping to talk to families, to hold babies, to hear stories that broke her heart and filled it at the same time. A father who had lost his job and didn't know how to feed his kids. A grandmother raising her grandchildren after their parents died. A teenager who had aged out of foster care with nowhere to go. All of them finding help. All of them finding hope. "I didn't do this." Grace found Victoria after an hour of tours. "This is you, your money, your influence." "My money and influence built the walls." Victoria shook her head. "You built the foundation. Without you, I'd still be the woman who cared more about her brand than her son. Without you, Mason would be..." She couldn't finish. Mason would be right here. Harrison appeared beside them, carrying Mason on his shoulders, getting ready to give Grace her other surprise. "There's more? One more thing." Victoria took Grace's hand. "Come upstairs." They climbed to the second floor. A large room had been set up with chairs and a small stage. People were gathered. Faces Grace recognized and faces she didn't. Her grandmother Rosalie sat in the front row. Destiny beside her, bouncing with excitement. "Mama!" Destiny jumped up and ran to her. "Were you surprised? Were you... I've been keeping the secret for weeks. You knew about this. Mrs. Victoria invited us. She said it was important." Grace looked around in bewilderment. Jerome was there. Dr. Chen from the hospital. Sarah Rodriguez from CPS. The nurses who had treated Mason. The lawyers who had handled the case. Everyone who had been part of this story gathered in one room. Victoria guided her toward the front. "Sit down, Grace, please." Grace sat beside her grandmother. Rosalie took her hand. "I'm so proud of you, baby girl." Her grandmother's voice was thick with emotion. "So proud of who you've become." "I haven't changed. No, you've always been this person. You've just finally let the world see." Victoria walked to the stage. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming." Her voice carried clearly. 8 months ago, I was the worst version of myself. I had everything society says matters. Money, fame, success, a beautiful home, a beautiful son. She paused. And I was destroying that son, day by day, choice by choice. I was so focused on my image that I forgot he was a person, a small, vulnerable person who depended on me completely, and I failed him. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. Then Grace Thompson walked into my home, not as a savior, not as a hero, just as a cleaning woman doing her job. But she saw what I refused to see. She heard what I refused to hear. She risked everything, her job, her family, her future, to save a child who wasn't even hers. Victoria looked directly at Grace. "Grace, you taught me something I'll carry for the rest of my life. You taught me that the measure of a person isn't in their job title. It's not in their bank account. It's not in their followers or their fame or their designer clothes. The measure of a person is in their character. And what they do when doing the right thing costs them everything." She walked down from the stage and stood in front of Grace. "I wanted to give you something today. Not just the center, not just the recognition, something more personal." She held out a small box. Grace opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a simple gold chain with a pendant. The pendant showed 2 hands clasped together, one larger, one smaller, a mother and child. "I had it made for you." Victoria's voice was barely audible. "To remind you that what you did mattered, that you changed our lives, that you gave me back my son." Grace couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face. Victoria fastened the chain around her neck, then pulled her into a hug. "Thank you."
Penmini!
Victoria whispered in her ear. "For seeing Mason, for saving him, for not giving up on me even when I gave you every reason to." "Thank you," Grace whispered back, "for becoming the mother he deserved." They held each other for a long moment, two women from different worlds, changed forever by a child's cry that refused to be ignored. Mason wiggled between them. "Hug too, Mason, hug too." They pulled him into the embrace, his small arms wrapped around both their necks. "Love, Mama." He kissed Victoria's cheek. "Love, Grace." He kissed Grace's cheek. "Love, everybody." The room burst into applause. People were crying, laughing, wiping their eyes. Grace looked around at all the people who had gathered to celebrate, to honor, to remember, and she realized something she had never understood before. She had spent her whole life feeling invisible, feeling small, feeling like her voice didn't matter because she didn't have power or money or influence. But she had been wrong. One voice could change everything. One act of courage could ripple outward until it touched hundreds of lives. One ordinary person could become extraordinary just by refusing to look away. Destiny tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, are you crying happy tears or sad tears?" Grace laughed through her sobs. "Happy, baby, so happy." "Good." Destiny hugged her tight. "Because I think you're a hero, and heroes should always cry happy tears." After the ceremony, Grace found herself alone on the center's rooftop. The city spread out below her, millions of lives, intersecting and diverging stories being written every second. "Mind if I join you?" She turned. Harrison stood in the doorway. "Of course." He walked over and leaned against the railing beside her. "Hell of a journey, isn't it?" "That's one way to put it. 8 months ago, I was a man who couldn't look up from his phone long enough to see his own son suffering." Harrison's voice was heavy. "I told myself it was Victoria's department, her problem, her responsibility. And now? Now I take Mason to therapy 3 times a week. I read to him every night. I know his favorite foods and his favorite shows and the way he scrunches up his nose when he's thinking hard." Harrison smiled sadly. "I know my son. For the first time in his life, I actually know him." "That's growth. That's you." Harrison turned to face her. "You showed me what I was missing. Not by lecturing or judging, just by being present. By caring. By refusing to accept that a child's pain was somehow normal." Grace shook her head. "I only did what anyone would do." "No, that's the thing, Grace. Most people don't do what you did. Most people see suffering and look away. They tell themselves it's not their business, it's not their place. They can't afford to get involved." He put a hand on her shoulder. "You couldn't afford to get involved either. You had more to lose than almost anyone. But you did it anyway, because character isn't about what's convenient. It's about what's right." Grace looked out at the city, all those lights, all those lives. "My grandmother used to tell me that. The measure of a person is in their character." "Your grandmother sounds wise." "She is. She's the reason I am who I am." "Then maybe I should thank her too." They stood in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Harrison spoke again. "Victoria and I have been talking about the future." "What about it?" "We're selling the penthouse, moving somewhere smaller, somewhere Mason can run in a backyard and get dirty and be a normal kid. That's a big change. It's a necessary one." Harrison's voice was firm. "That penthouse was a monument to everything we did wrong. Every time I walk through it, I remember who I was there, who Victoria was, what we almost destroyed. Where will you go? Connecticut, maybe, or upstate. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can start over." "What about Victoria's career?" "She's scaling way back, keeping the nonprofit work, keeping the foundation, but the fashion empire." Harrison shrugged. "She's selling most of it, keeping just enough to fund the things that matter." Grace absorbed this. The Victoria she had met 8 months ago would have died before giving up her empire, would have sacrificed anything to maintain her status. She's really changed. "We both have." Harrison met her eyes. "Because of you. Because you showed us that there's more to life than what the world sees. There's who we are when no one's watching. There's what we do for the people who depend on us. And Mason, how is he really?" Harrison's face softened completely. "He's incredible. His spine is almost completely straight now. The doctors say there won't be any lasting damage. He runs and jumps and plays like any 3-year-old should." His voice thickened. "He laughs, Grace. Real laughter. The kind that comes from deep in your belly. I didn't know what that sounded like until a few months ago. I'm so glad. He asks about you every day, wants to know when Grace is coming, gets excited every time you arrive. You're one of his favorite people in the whole world. Grace smiled. He's one of mine, too. I know it's a lot to ask. Harrison hesitated. But we were hoping, when we move, that you might consider coming with us. Grace blinked. What? Not forever, not if you don't want to, but for a while, to help Mason transition, to be there for him while everything changes. Harrison rushed on. We'd set you up in a guest house, your daughter and grandmother too if they want, good schools nearby, real nature, a different kind of life. Grace's mind reeled. Leave? Leave Manhattan? Leave everything she'd known? I don't know what to say. You don't have to answer now. Just think about it. Harrison touched her arm. But know that wherever we go, you'll always be welcome. You're family now, Grace. In every way that matters. He left her alone on the rooftop with the weight of possibility pressing down on her shoulders. That night, Grace gathered her family at Rosalie's kitchen table. Destiny sat across from her, still wearing the fancy dress from the ceremony. Rosalie sat at the head, her Bible close at hand, her eyes sharp with wisdom. They want us to move with them. Grace's voice was quiet. Harrison offered us a place in Connecticut, a real house. Good schools for Destiny, a fresh start. Rosalie's eyebrows rose. That's quite an offer. I don't know what to do. What does your heart say, Mama? Destiny leaned forward. Do you want to go? Grace thought about the question, really thought. I want what's best for Mason, and for you, and for all of us. She looked at her grandmother. But this apartment, this neighborhood, this life, it's all I've ever known. Change isn't always bad, baby girl. Rosalie's voice was gentle. Sometimes change is exactly what we need. What about you, Grandma? Could you leave here? Rosalie laughed softly. Child, I've lived in this apartment for 40 years. I know every crack in the walls, every squeak in the floors, every voice in the hallways. She reached across and took Grace's hands. But home isn't a place. Home is the people you love. Wherever you and Destiny are, that's where I want to be. Destiny bounced in her seat. Does that mean we can go? Does that mean I can have a backyard? I haven't decided yet, baby. But you're thinking about it. Destiny's eyes were huge. Please, Mama, please think about it really hard. I've never had a backyard. I've never climbed a tree or caught fireflies or any of the stuff kids in books do. Grace looked at her daughter, at the hope shining in her eyes, at the future stretching out before her. I'll think about it, I promise. 3 weeks later, Grace made her decision. She stood in the empty penthouse one last time as the movers carried out the final boxes. The space felt different without all the expensive furniture. Smaller, more human. Victoria found her by the window. Strange, isn't it, saying goodbye to a place? I've said goodbye to a lot of places in my life. Grace kept her eyes on the city below. This one feels different. Because something real happened here. Something that changed everything. Yes. They stood in silence for a moment. I've made my decision. Grace finally turned to face her. About Connecticut. Victoria's breath caught. And I'm coming. Grace smiled through the tears forming in her eyes. We all are. Destiny's already picked out the tree she wants to climb in the backyard. Victoria's face crumpled with relief. Thank God, I was so afraid you'd say no. I almost did, 100 times. But then I thought about Mason, about how far he's come, about how far we've all come. Sight. Grace took Victoria's hands. I'm not ready to walk away from that, not yet. Not ever. Victoria squeezed hard. You're stuck with us now, Grace Thompson, for better or worse. I've survived worse. They laughed together. Real laughter, the kind that only comes from shared struggle and shared healing. Mama Grace, Mason came running into the empty room, Harrison chasing behind him. Car ready, go new house now. Almost, sweetheart? Victoria scooped him up. Say goodbye to the old house first. Mason looked around the empty space. His face grew serious for a moment. Bye-bye, house. He waved a small hand. Bye-bye, hurting place. Victoria's breath caught. Grace felt tears spill down her cheeks. Even at 3 years old, he understood. He knew what this place had been, and he was ready to leave it behind. That's right, baby, Victoria kissed his forehead. Bye-bye to the hurting place. Hello to the happy place. Happy place have trees. So many trees. Happy place have Grace. Always. Mason grinned. Then let's go. They walked out together, a family rebuilt from ruins, a future rising from ashes. The Connecticut house was everything the penthouse hadn't been. Warm, lived in, messy in all the right ways. Mason ran through the backyard like he'd been freed from prison. Destiny chased him, both of them shrieking with laughter. A dog newly adopted bounded between them. Rosalie sat on the porch watching her Bible in her lap, a smile on her weathered face. Grace stood at the kitchen window washing dishes, watching her two worlds merge into one. Victoria appeared beside her. Thank you. You've said that about 1,000 times now. I'll say it 1,000 more. Victoria picked up a dish towel and started drying. Thank you for taking a chance on us, on me, for believing I could change when I wasn't sure myself. Everyone deserves a second chance. Not everyone takes it. Victoria set down a plate. I've been thinking about something, about the woman I was before, about how I got so lost. And I think I was scared. My whole life. Scared of not being enough. Scared of being ordinary. Scared of being forgotten. Victoria's voice dropped. So I built walls, higher and higher, and I forgot that walls don't just keep people out. They trap you inside. What about now? Now I'm learning to live without walls. Victoria smiled. It's terrifying, and wonderful, and absolutely worth it. Mason burst through the back door. Mama Grace? Come see, found a frog, a real frog. A frog? Victoria laughed. Show me. They followed him into the backyard. Destiny held the frog carefully in cupped hands, her face glowing with wonder. Look, Mama, his name is Mr. Hoppy. Grace crouched down beside her daughter. He's beautiful, baby. Can we keep him? Frogs belong outside, sweetheart, but we can visit him whenever we want. Destiny considered this. Okay, but we have to say goodbye first. She set Mr. Hoppy gently in the grass. The frog paused, looked at them all, then hopped away into the bushes. Bye-bye, Mr. Hoppy, Mason waved enthusiastically. See you tomorrow. Grace looked at the scene around her, her daughter happy and free, her grandmother peaceful on the porch, Mason healthy and whole, Victoria and Harrison learning to be parents for the first time. This was what she had fought for, what she had risked everything for. Not money, not fame, not recognition, these ordinary moments of extraordinary grace. Grace. Destiny tugged at her sleeve. Are you happy? Grace pulled her daughter into her arms. So happy, baby, so incredibly happy. That night, after the children were in bed, Grace sat alone on the porch. The stars were brighter here than in the city. Thousands of them, scattered across the darkness like promises. Rosalie came out and sat beside her. Beautiful night. Beautiful life. Bun! Grace leaned her head on her grandmother's shoulder. I couldn't have done any of this without you, Grandma, without your voice in my head, without your words guiding me. I just gave you the seeds, baby girl. You did all the growing yourself. The measure of a person isn't in their job title. Grace smiled. You said that to me so many times I lost count. Because it's true. And because I knew you'd need it someday. Rosalie took her hand. When you were little, people looked at us and saw nothing. Poor black family in a poor black neighborhood. Not important. Not valuable. Not worth seeing. Her voice grew stronger. But I knew better. I knew that you were extraordinary. That your heart was bigger than any mansion and your courage was stronger than any army. I just had to make sure you knew it too. Grace's eyes filled with tears. I know it now. Good. Rosalie squeezed her hand. Then my work is done. Don't say that. I still need you. You'll always have me, child. In your heart. In your blood. In every choice you make and every life you touch. Rosalie smiled up at the stars. That's what legacy is. Not money or monuments. It's the love we pass down, the wisdom we share, the courage we model. You've given me all that. And you'll give it to Destiny, and she'll give it to her children, and on it goes. Rosalie's voice was soft but certain. That's how we change the world, Grace. Not with grand gestures, with daily choices, with ordinary courage, with the simple decision to see someone who's hurting and refuse to look away. They sat in silence, grandmother and granddaughter, as the stars wheeled overhead. 1 year later, Grace stood at the entrance of the Grace Thompson Center's newest location. The Bronx facility had doubled in size. The one in Brooklyn had just opened. Plans were underway for locations in Queens and Staten Island. Thousands of families helped. Thousands of lives changed. Because one woman heard a child crying and couldn't look away, Victoria appeared beside her Mason on her hip. The boy was almost 4 now, strong, healthy, his spine perfectly straight, his legs carrying him wherever he wanted to go. Big day, Victoria smiled. 5 locations, 5. I still can't believe this is real. Believe it. Victoria put a hand on Grace's shoulder. This is your legacy, Grace. This is what you built. We built it together. We did. Victoria looked at her son. And we're just getting started. Mason reached for Grace. Grace hold. She took him into her arms. This boy she had saved. This boy who had saved her right back. I love you, sweetheart. Love you too. Mason snuggled against her shoulder. Love you forever. Grace closed her eyes. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. The fear and the courage. The threats and the breakthroughs. The moments when she wanted to give up and the moments when she found strength she didn't know she had. She thought about her grandmother's words echoing through every choice she'd made. The measure of a person isn't in their job title, it's in their character. She had been a cleaning woman, now she was a symbol, a name on buildings, a story people told to inspire courage in others. But deep down she was still the same person, the woman who heard a child crying and couldn't walk away. That was who she was. That was who she would always be. And that was enough. More than enough. Victoria touched her arm. Ready to go inside, there's a ribbon to cut. Grace looked at the banner above the entrance. Her name, her legacy, her contribution to a world that so desperately needed people who refused to look away. Ready. They walked in together, a millionaire who had learned to be a mother, a cleaning woman who had become a hero, a child who had taught them both what love really meant. Inside, families waited. Children laughed. Hope filled every corner. Grace picked up the scissors. The crowd fell silent. This center exists because someone once told me that the measure of a person isn't in their job title. Her voice rang out clear and strong. It's in their character. It's in what we do when doing the right thing costs us everything. She looked at Victoria, at Harrison, at Mason clapping in his father's arms, at Rosalie and Destiny beaming with pride. I was just a cleaning woman who heard a child crying. I could have walked away. I almost did. But something in me refused to accept that his pain was none of my business. Something in me believed that one voice could make a difference. She raised the scissors. Today we open these doors for every child who needs to be seen, every family who needs to be helped, every person who feels invisible in a world that too often looks away. She cut the ribbon. The crowd erupted in cheers, and somewhere in that noise Grace heard her grandmother's voice one final time. Well done, baby girl, well done. Mason broke free from Harrison and ran to her, crashing into her legs with the full force of his 3-year-old enthusiasm. Grace did it. Grace cut the ribbon. She laughed and scooped him up. We all did it, sweetheart. Together. Together, Mason shouted happily. Together forever. Grace looked out at the faces before her. The families she would help. The children she would protect. The future she would shape. She had started with nothing. No power. No money. No voice that anyone wanted to hear. But she had something more powerful than all of that. She had courage. She had compassion. She had the unshakable belief that every person mattered, especially the ones the world had forgotten. And now standing in a building that bore her name, surrounded by love and hope and second chances, Grace Thompson finally understood the truth her grandmother had been teaching her all along. You don't have to be powerful to change the world. You just have to be brave. You just have to care. You just have to see the person in front of you and refuse to look away. Because in the end, the measure of a person isn't in their job title or their bank account or their followers or their fame. The measure of a person is in the lives they touch, the hearts they heal, the children they save. And by that measure, Grace Thompson was the richest woman in the world. What do you think of this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if stories like this touch your heart, please subscribe to our channel and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because somewhere out there right now, a child is crying. And someone needs to listen. Someone needs to see. Someone needs to be brave enough to say, this matters and I will not look away. That someone could be you. The measure of a person isn't in their job title. It's in their character. What will yours be?